Chapter 1775. You want a lion to be led by a sheep? Bo2 looked at her expressionlessly. Trust me, Mr. Bo Tuesday. This is your best choice. I've never been coerced. A person who doesn't know when to retreat is very stupid. Vestana was even calmer. You too. Walking in here without any preparation is your biggest mistake, Bo2 said. Are you sure I'm unprepared? Vestana smiled faintly. Are you talking about the people outside? They can't save you. Vestana was still calm. She opened her coat, and there were small bottles hanging inside. What do you think of these? Bombs. That can't hurt me. These are potassium anhydride and manganese compounds. If you don't know what they are, you can ask Mr. Mady next to you. Mr. Bo2, these things on her can blow up the whole building, Mady said in a low voice. Bo2 smiled. Very well. Is this your acknowledgement of me? I need to think about it. How long? A day, Bo2 said. I hope you won't disappoint me, Vestana said. You're very powerful, but you're not invincible. Mr. Bo2, you should know what I mean. Vestana walked out of the building. Brits immediately came up to her. Miss Vestana, that madman didn't do anything to you? No. Vestana glanced at the dice in Brits's hand. Did you calculate my luck for today before I went in? Yes. Brits looked at the dice in his hand. What's the result? Stupid decision, Brits said. Looks like your calculation isn't accurate, Vestana said with a smile. Did he agree? He will, Vestana said. Bo2 looked up at the factory in front of him. His final goal was to work in this factory. Hey, who are you looking for? A worker walked out. Hello, I'm looking for Kevin. Can you call him out? Kevin? Okay. After a while, a somewhat short worker walked out. However, this worker's figure was very refined. It felt like every muscle on his body had no excess fat. There was still some dirt on his face, as he looked at Bo2 in confusion. Hello, are you looking for me? Yes, you're Kevin, right? I mean, do we know each other? I don't know him. Then why are you looking for me? You're an enhancer? You don't look like an enhancer. Kevin looked at Bo Tuesday. You too? Bo2 ignored Kevin's question and continued staring at him. Are you really an enhancer? If you don't want to say it, then forget it. I'm leaving. With that, Kevin turned around and left. But at some point, Mady was still standing behind Kevin. Do you want to fight me? Kevin looked at Mady and Bo Tuesday. There's something. But it's not convenient to say it here. Why don't we talk in our car? Mady said. But at that moment, Kevin broke into a run. Actually, Kevin had been pretending to be calm. He was a spiritualist. How could he not know what had happened in Los Angeles recently? More than 10 enhancer spiritualists had been attacked. And Kevin knew a few of them. Just now, Bo2 kept asking if he was an enhancer. So Kevin was already secretly on guard. Mady suddenly burst out with shocking speed and charged at Kevin. He pressed down on Kevin's head and pressed him to the ground. But Kevin's body displayed a level of softness that surpassed humans. With a twist of his neck, he actually managed to twist his head away before it touched the ground. His shoulders, neck, and arms were all twisted as well. Like a mudfish, he hurriedly broke free from Mady's grasp. It's actually a soft body, Bo2 said, somewhat surprised. He didn't expect this enhancer spiritualist to have a rare soft body. Soft body was similar to yoga, but it didn't come from India. In fact, there were similar spells all over the world. There were also similar bloodlines that were very suitable for this kind of spell or magic. Kevin didn't even have time to be pleased with himself as he broke free. Suddenly he felt his feet sink, as if he had sunk into a swamp. Just then Mady walked over. Large amounts of black liquid seeped out of his hands. Kevin could feel that his mana was rapidly draining away. Okay, let's go, Bo2 said. The two of them left Kevin, who was already unconscious, and strode away. Before Bo2 left, he glanced in another direction. Mr. Bo2, what's wrong? Nothing, Bo2 said, unconcerned. Those people probably sent them to monitor me. Mr. Bo2, are we really joining that organization? Of course not, Bo2 said. But Jeff Ryder must return to me. In the direction Bo2 had looked at, Masa and Crumb were hiding nearby. That guy's weird, Crumb said. He seems to have discovered us. Who cares? We'll just send the message to that person, and then it'll have nothing to do with us. Masa only felt that the trouble was getting worse. He just wanted to escape as soon as possible. Masa dialed the number Chen Zhao had left. Sir, we found him. He just attacked an enhancer spiritualist. Follow him, Chen Zhao said. I'll go as soon as possible. That person is too dangerous, Masa said, troubled. Do you think I'm not dangerous enough? Chen Zhao's tone suddenly turned cold. Fine, we'll follow him. Masa could only bite the bullet. He told us to follow that person. Masa and Crumb followed him out of the city. Bo2 knew that someone was following him, but he mistook it for someone sent by the psionic team to monitor him. So he didn't do anything. He was going to the psionic team right now. He only wanted to get Jeff Ryder back. Thus, he allowed Crumb and Masa to follow him and didn't fight back. There seems to be a building up ahead. That's weird. When did such a building appear here? Crumb and Masa saw Bo2's car enter the circular building up ahead. They didn't dare to go any further. Suddenly, Masa felt a chill on his neck. A dagger appeared on his neck. You better not move. Otherwise, it'll be hard for me to guarantee your safety. Crumb was about to transform into King Kong, but he felt a pain in his foot. A viper was coiled around his foot. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1776. Crumb felt that his magic was disappearing rapidly. His body became weaker and weaker, and he finally fell to the ground. Aren't these two your people? Just then, Bo2 appeared before the two and then Masa. I recognize you. You're the one who sold me the information. Bring them in first, Vestana said. At the same time, she looked at Bo Tuesday. Also welcome Mr. Bo Tuesday. Where's Jeff Ryde? He's inside. Vestana looked at Bo2 and took out a magic contract. Mr. Bo2, why don't you sign this first? I need to confirm if Jeff Ryde is safe, Bo2 said. Okay. Vestana brought Bo2 into the HQ, and to the glass room where Jeff Ryde was locked up. All the members of the psionic team were beside him. If Bo2 tried to kidnap Jeff Ryde, they would stop him immediately. Great. A smile appeared on Bo2's face. Give me the contract. Bo2 pressed down his fingerprint without hesitation. Welcome, Bo Tuesday. Vestana finally heaved a sigh of relief. We're on the same side now. Just then, a subordinate's voice sounded in Vestana's earpiece. Ms. Vestana, the president of the supernatural organization is outside the HQ. Him? What's he doing here? Vestana frowned. Britz tossed the dice in his hand and caught it. When he opened his hand, there was no face. This was the first time such a faceless result had happened. Britz's expression was serious. Everyone get ready. Let's go welcome the president. It was Chen Zhao's first visit. All the psionic team members went out. Vestana led the way. This was different from last time when they met in public. Before, everyone had been at daggers drawn, but generally speaking, both sides had restrained themselves. But now it was different. Chen Zhao's intentions were unclear. Hi, Mr. Chen. Vestana greeted Chen Zhao, pretending to be relaxed. Hi, Ms. Vestana. Chen Zhao also greeted Vestana. However, Chen Zhao kept glancing at the psionic team members. Mr. Chen, why didn't you tell us you were coming? We weren't prepared. I can't help it. It was a spur-of-the-moment idea, so I didn't have time to inform you. Chen Zhao and Vestana exchanged pleasantries with each other. Mr. Chen, what's the purpose of your visit? To find someone, Chen Zhao said. Vestana's heart skipped a beat. Could it be those two from before? Were those two from the supernatural organization? If that was the case, then he would be able to defeat him. After all, they were now minding their own business. But the people from the supernatural organization had come to the psionic team's territory, and he was caught red-handed by them. Vestana whispered a few words to her men. Then Crumb and Masa were brought out and thrown before Chen Zhao. The two of them were as miserable as they could be, lying limply on the ground. Mr. Chen, you're looking for them, right? Vestana looked at him proudly. Now, she felt that the night in the desert was so wonderful, so pleasant. They're not the people I'm looking for. Chen Zhao glanced at Crumb and Masa. Vestana was taken aback. Not them. Chen Zhao looked down at Masa. Where's the person I asked you to find? Among them, it's that bald black man. Masa said weakly. Chen Zhao's gaze swept across everyone, and finally landed on Bo Tuesday, meeting Chen Zhao's gaze. Bo2 narrowed his eyes. He could vaguely feel that Chen Zhao was here for him. You! Come out! Chen Zhao pointed at Bo Tuesday. Chen Zhao's action didn't just annoy Bo Tuesday. Everyone in the psionic team was displeased. Chen Zhao, an outsider, had actually come to their headquarters and asked for someone. Even if the psionic team had fought Bo2 with their lives. No matter how they felt about Bo2 now, he was at least a member of the psionic team. Vestana's expression darkened. Mr. Chen, this isn't the supernatural organization. So what? Chen Zhao looked at Vestana disapprovingly. Mr. Chen, are you here for trouble? Or do you want to start a war? Vestana's smile disappeared. She looked at Chen Zhao with a dark gaze. If you can't give me an explanation, I can only assume that you want to start a war with us. Chen Zhao's lips curled into a smile. He took a step forward and pressed toward Vestana. I should be the one to explain. The family of a member of the supernatural organization was attacked. And it was your people who attacked her. Now, either you hand her over, or I'll assume that you want to start a war. Vestana's expression changed again. She really didn't expect things to be like this. Bo2's crazy attack on spiritualists had probably happened a few days ago. According to Chen Zhao, Bo2 was indeed in the wrong. However, Bo2 wasn't a member of the psionic team. It was useless to explain things like this now, because Bo2 was one of them now. So Vestana couldn't hand Bo2 over at all. Moreover, it was in front of everyone in the psionic team. If she handed Bo2 over now, then the psionic team would completely fall apart. I'll investigate this and give Mr. Chen an explanation, Vestana said. I'm not asking you to give me an explanation, Chen Zhao said calmly. I just want to know if you want to start a war. Vestana clenched her teeth, and her breathing became heavy. She didn't expect that recruiting Bo2 into the psionic team would cause such trouble. She'd thought that Bo2's addition would greatly increase the psionic team's power. She didn't expect Chen Zhao to come looking for them right after. Everyone was burning with anger. At this moment, all of them were united against a common enemy. No one wanted to be useless. No one had to swallow their anger when they were bullied at their doorstep. Even Vestana was a bit furious. She glanced at Bo2 from the corner of her eye. Bo2 was so strong. If he worked together with the others in the psionic team, they might be able to defeat Chen Zhao. Vestana's idea became more and more unstoppable. She wanted to try. The chance was right before her. But now, the people of the supernatural organization weren't in Los Angeles. This was when Chen Zhao was alone. As long as she defeated Chen Zhao, the supernatural organization would be completely replaced by the psionic team. Should she do this? She could use this chance to challenge Chen Zhao. Vestana's breathing became heavier and heavier. Chapter 1777. Just as Vestana was about to make her decision, Bo2 and Meidi walked out. Ms. Vestana, don't worry. A strange smile appeared on Bo2's face. He turned and looked at Chen Zhao. I also want to see who gave you the courage to challenge me. Seeing Bo2's black water seep out of his body, everyone retreated. They didn't want to be affected by Bo2's black water. Chen Zhao walked toward Bo Tuesday. When he stepped into the black water, he could feel the evil in it. The black water was like dark shadow, but they weren't the same thing. Bo2's expression changed slightly. It was his first time encountering someone who dared to step into his fallen domain. In the past, all his enemies would choose to avoid his fallen domain. For example, when they fought just now, the psionic team would move away. Most importantly, Chen Zhao wasn't affected by the fallen domain. Suddenly Meidi disappeared. So fast, everyone was shocked. They couldn't catch Meidi's figure at all. Last time, he'd only absorbed a tank's magic power and had the strength of a tank. But this time, he had such an exaggerated speed. Were they attacking spiritualists everywhere because they could turn other people's magic power into their own? And this power could be stacked on top of each other? If that was the case, it was too scary. Vestana's eyes flashed. Maybe Bo2 and Meidi could defeat Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao suddenly grabbed at the air. Meidi appeared instantly, and Chen Zhao grabbed his neck. Everyone sucked in a cold breath again. Chen Zhao grabbed Meidi just like that? But just when everyone thought that Meidi was caught, Meidi's neck suddenly shrank. Chen Zhao felt like he'd grabbed a slippery loach. His hand slipped away immediately. Meidi quickly retreated. Chen Zhao looked at his palm and continued walking toward Bo Tuesday. Bo Tu's expression was serious. Meidi had absorbed the magic power of more than 10 people. This magic power would only decrease and not increase. But Meidi was still at his peak. Even in this state, Meidi couldn't fight Chen Zhao head-on. Voodoo Bee Swarm. Bo Tu quickly cast a spell. From the black water, swarms of black bees began to fly out. When the others saw the swarm of black bees, their expressions changed. Bo Tu hadn't used this trick on them that day. The number of black wasps grew larger and larger. Gradually, it felt like the black wasps had turned into a dark cloud. Bo Tu pointed at Chen Zhao. The black cloud formed by the black bees immediately surged toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his mouth and started inhaling. The bees were sucked into his mouth uncontrollably. His stomach was like a bottomless pit. Until the black hornet swarm was completely sucked dry. In the end, Chen Zhao chewed. It tastes good raw too. Everyone's expression changed again. Just then, Meidi appeared behind Chen Zhao. Pung! Chen Zhao turned around and punched. Meidi's body froze. His head had already been smashed. Everyone's expression changed. In their eyes, Meidi was already strong enough. But he couldn't even block a single move. Bo Tu instinctively wanted to escape. However, Chen Zhao saw through Bo Tu's intentions and instantly appeared before him. The psionic team members couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Because Chen Zhao was faster than Meidi, at least Meidi could still catch his trajectory. But Chen Zhao didn't even have a shadow. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Bo Tuesday. Bo Tu paled. Chen Zhao had already reached out and grabbed Bo Tu's shoulder. You're much weaker than I thought. Bo Tu's fallen domain suddenly surged and rolled back from all directions, as if it was going to wrap around Chen Zhao. But the next moment, Chen Zhao released dark lava under his feet. Be it in terms of level or quantity, the dark lava had an absolute advantage. If Chen Zhao released it completely, the entire psionic team's headquarters would be swallowed by the dark lava. The dark lava swallowed Bo Tu's fallen domain directly. The expressions of Bo Tu and the psionic team froze. They'd thought that it would be a fierce battle. But the battle was one-sided. In the battle a few days ago, Bo Tu and the psionic team hadn't started an all-out battle, but they were at least evenly matched. But today, Meidi was far more powerful than before. But against Chen Zhao, he was in a hopeless situation. I've swallowed other people's mana before. Chen Zhao smiled. But in Bo Tu's eyes, Chen Zhao's smile was as terrifying as a demon's. But every time I swallow someone's flesh, I get sick, Chen Zhao said. But that won't be a problem with my dark lava devour. Plus, your magic is compatible with my dark lava. They're both dark powers. The next moment, the dark lava suddenly poured into Bo Tu's mouth, nose and ears. At the start, Bo Tu struggled violently. But it didn't last long. Bo Tu's limbs lost their strength. Chen Zhao casually threw Bo Tu into the dark lava. Bo Tu slowly sank into the dark lava and disappeared in the end. The dark lava quickly gathered under Chen Zhao's feet. In the end, it was completely collected. Chen Zhao turned to look at Vestana. Ms. Vestana, thank you for your cooperation. I hope that the supernatural organization and the psionic team can remain friends forever. Vestana's expression was extremely dark. She couldn't even give a perfunctory smile. Because Chen Zhao had killed Bo Tu in front of everyone. Even if Bo Tu stood out first. But Bo Tu was also a member of the psionic team. Chen Zhao had dealt a heavy blow to the unity of the psionic team. At the same time, he'd dealt a blow to her prestige. If there's nothing else, please leave, Vestana said with a dark expression. Chen Zhao looked at Vestana. I still want Jeff Ryder. Vestana was instantly enraged. I can't give Jeff Ryder to you. He's a criminal. Even if Jeff Ryder wasn't important, she didn't want to cooperate with Chen Zhao anymore. I know he's a criminal. Oh right, I caught him myself. Chen Zhao smiled at Vestana. If you think I don't have the right to take him away, you can ask the victim. See if he favors you or me. Mr. Chen, don't you think you're going overboard? Blitz walked up and looked at Chen Zhao. Here comes another one. Chen Zhao looked at Blitz. Before you accuse me of going overboard, you better wash your own butt. If there's a next time, I'll think without hesitation that you want to start a war. Chapter 1778. What a joke. They were enemies to begin with. Was Chen Zhao going to give them face? In the face of a group of people who were scheming to make him their enemy, Chen Zhao really wanted to kill them all. So Chen Zhao would go as far as he could. If he could really provoke them and make them take the initiative to attack him, Chen Zhao wouldn't even give them a chance to breathe. If you're not willing to send me out, I can go in myself. Release him. Vestana gritted her teeth and roared. It was not hard to imagine how bad Vestana was feeling right now. But at the same time, she was glad that she didn't act rashly just now. Given the power Chen Zhao had displayed just now, killing Bo Tu did not take much effort at all. He had the strength to fight against them. If she hadn't been able to control herself just now, the psionic team might have ended here. This time, no one objected to Vestana. Chen Zhao's display of power also shocked them. Not everyone has the courage to face death. Of course, most of them were rational. On one hand, Bo Tu wasn't one of them. They didn't want to fight Chen Zhao to the death. For Bo Tuesday, Jeff Ryder was sent to Chen Zhao. Where is Mr. Bo Tu? Where's Mr. Bado? Where did he go? Why you? Bo Tu had clearly come just now. Why did he leave again? Jeff Ryder shouted uncontrollably. Chen Zhao ignored Jeff Ryder's shouts. He dragged him away. But after 2 steps, he dragged Crumb and Masa away as well. What's wrong with you two? We've all been poisoned by the magic viper. We can't recover our magic power. Chen Zhao was too lazy to detoxify them. It would only take a couple of days anyway. The demonic viper was not fatal, at least not to a spiritualist. If an ordinary person was bitten by a demonic viper, they would still die. However, spiritualists would only lose their magic power. After 2 or 3 days, the body would develop antibodies, and the demonic horned snake's venom would be detoxified. You guys rest in the car. Chen Zhao tossed Crumb and Masa in the car, and turned to Jeff Ryder. Jeff Ryder started yelling again. He still couldn't accept reality. Suddenly, Chen Zhao carried Jeff Ryder and rose into the sky. Jeff Ryder was so scared that he was speechless. Flying. Flying, this person can fly. 10,000 meters, 12,000 meters, 15,000 meters, 20,000 meters. Jeff Ryder was having difficulty breathing. 20,000 meters was basically the limit of what humans could do without equipment. Speaking of which, Jeff Ryder's body was still in good shape. Most people would not be able to withstand it at 15,000 meters. Chen Zhao suddenly let go. Jeff Ryder fell down uncontrollably. Of course, at an altitude of 20,000 meters, the speed of falling was still greatly affected by air resistance. So the speed was not considered fast. The lower the altitude, the greater the effect of gravity. You have about 3 minutes to answer my question. If you don't answer my question in 3 minutes, you'll die. Understand? Chen Zhao was also descending rapidly. Save me. Save me. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Where is Lothiel? Dead. He's dead. He's long dead. Then what's with the feeling in your body? I don't know. It's Boda's magic. It's his magic. He said I replaced Lohil. What do you mean? I don't understand. I don't know either. I really don't know. Boda told me to eat Lohil. You ate Lohil? It's Bo Tu who forced me. He forced me. Chen Zhao only felt nauseous. However, Jeff Ryder's answer still did not explain the disgusting feeling in his body. Just as he was about to fall, Chen Zhao slowed down Jeff's fall and saved his life. But Jeff Ryder could no longer stand up. His eyes had lost focus and his mouth was open, drool flowing out. Chen Zhao realized that Jeff Ryder's soul was damaged. Part of his soul had left his body. Scared out of his wits, however, this guy deserved it. Even if he was fine, Ellie Rodriguez Alexander would not let him go. Of course, from Chen Zhao's interaction with Ellie Rodriguez Alexander, he could tell that the old woman was not as kind as she looked. The old woman was not as benevolent as she looked. Even if Jeff Ryder was scared out of his wits, he might not be able to win Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's sympathy. On top of that, Ellie Rodriguez Alexander might even think that Jeff Ryder was pretending to be crazy. After all, if Chen Zhao could not see the nature of the soul, he might also suspect that Jeff Ryder was pretending. Chen Zhao tossed Jeff Ryder into the trunk. He did not care if he would suffocate him to death. Where do you two get off? After sending Crumb and Masa to their house, Chen Zhao left without a second thought. Then, Chen Zhao left Jeff Ryder at the entrance of the police station and called David. Chen Zhao was still thinking about the annoying spell. Be it Jeff Ryder or Bo Tu, both of them had that annoying vibe. Chen Zhao decided to call Zhang Tianyi again. Old Zhang, it's me Chen Zhao. Do you know what time it is in China? Chen Zhao looked at the time. It should be morning. You should be up by now, right? I usually sleep until late in the morning. I'm old and can't compare to you young people. I'll sleep in. Don't talk about age. I can go 10 days and 10 nights without sleep. With your cultivation, you're probably going to abstain from eating, right? Can an old man like me compare to you? Although Zhang Tianyi's cultivation wasn't as good as Chen Zhao's, he could still see the world. Chen Zhao did not believe that he would have the mental problems of an old man. Tell me, what is it? Zhang Tianyi's tone changed, and he suddenly got to the point. Remember what I told you a few days ago? He's annoying. I caught him today, and he said that someone cast some kind of magic on him. Then he ate a living person, saying that he wanted to replace the meaning of his existence. Wait, you're saying that guy ate a living person? Yes, I think I know. I've never seen it, but I suddenly understand after hearing your description. What exactly is going on? Actually, that guy ate the karma of that unlucky guy and gave up his identity as a human. As for the annoying feeling you mentioned, it's actually this sense of dislocation. It's like a burly man wearing a woman's clothes. Not really. Nowadays, a lot of men look good in women's clothes. Chapter 1779. I've been watching traps recently too, Zhang Tianyi said. Chen Zhao felt like he'd heard a huge secret. Forget it, Zhang Tianyi said seriously. Let's get back to business. I never changed the topic. You're the one who suddenly talked about traps. Ahem. To be honest, there's nothing special about this spell. It's a spell that steals other people's karma. It sounds awesome, but it's actually a disguise. It can't fool anyone. If it's someone you haven't seen for years, you might be able to trick them with the faint shadow of the victim. But if it's someone the victim or the murderer is familiar with, it can't be hidden at all. Chen Zhao nodded. Ellie Rodriguez Alexander, who Jeff Ryder had lied to, hadn't seen her grandson for 20 years. Jeff Ryder's family or classmates could tell his original identity. So this spell was indeed useless. Chen Zhao felt that if he had the time, he might as well make his face look like Low Hill. Perhaps the success rate would be higher. Of course, Bo Tu was already dead, and Jeff Ryder deserved to die too. If Ellie Rodriguez Alexander knew that her grandson was eaten by Jeff Ryder, she would definitely be shocked. Chen Zhao wondered how Ellie Rodriguez would deal with Jeff Ryder. Oh, did you know that Tamamo no Mei came to China a while ago? And then she ran away, of course. Fuck, that little vixen captured the hearts of many boys and girls. Her performance was horrible. You saw it. I'm looking at it critically. Did she leave by herself? No, she was chased away. There's someone capable in China. Our country is vast, and there are countless hermit experts. What's so difficult about chasing away a little vixen? By the way, are there really hidden masters in China? I don't know, Zhang Tianyi said disapprovingly. But no matter how strong they are, they can't be higher than you. You're really a weirdo. But you do have a lot of treasures. It shouldn't be a problem to kill 1 or 2 little vixens. Chen Zhao remembered Zhang Tianyi's words. If they could kill Tamamo no Mei, they could probably kill him too. Since Wuxia had it, other countries might have it too. Since Japan had 3 divine weapons, the other countries might also have 1 or 2 divine weapons, if they pooled their resources together. When are you free to come to America again? I'll treat you to a meal. I'll never go to America again. I've calculated my fate. I won't leave Wuxia before I die, so if you want to see me again, come back. We'll talk about it in the future. Chen Zhao sighed. Young man, if you don't get rid of your worries, your cultivation won't be refined. Don't talk nonsense. I don't believe that mental illness can affect one's cultivation. Heh, your willpower is quite strong. Looks like this is useless against you. By the way, when you're at the end of your lifespan, do you want to learn from the 23rd generation Blood Mary and come up with a Longhu mission or something like that? Or do you want to take the treasure of the Celestial Master sect of Longhu Mountain and hold a martial arts circle convention. Get lost. If I organize a martial arts tournament, it might just be for you. Do you think I'm stupid? Besides, I can still live for another 20 to 30 years. No matter what, I'll live longer than Blood Mary. Zhang Tianyi scolded with a smile. Plus, I don't see you being that enthusiastic about Blood Mary's Scarlet mission. Zhang Tianyi might be in China, but he had connections and spies. The supernatural organization probably wouldn't be able to escape his eyes no matter what they did. The missions are too scattered, and there are too many. Plus, her so-called reward is meaningless to me. I'm not interested at all. That's true. The Scarlet Church has a lot of good stuff, but she can't bear to take out the real good stuff. Forget it. I'll go back to sleep. Norway, deep in the forest, how long will the fog take to disperse? Gaia asked. There's no wind here all year round. The fog lasts for more than 10 days every time. The person who answered Gaia's question was a local spiritualist guide called Derlin. Other than being a spiritualist, Derlin was also a university professor. It was very easy to get lost and get separated in the fog. Of course, so far the team was still intact. Everyone was equipped with a Sat-NAV watch. Other than positioning, the Sat-NAV watch could also send out distress signals and find out the location and distance between each other. But everyone could feel that Derlin seemed to be looking down on them, because they were from North America. Also, because along the way, they had been using the equipment they brought with them to solve problems. They didn't use the spiritualists' method to solve problems. In addition, the way this group of people worked together was too strange. Klaus and the Lightning Squad were obviously normal people. All of them were equipped with firearms and explosives. Of course, Derlin didn't really expect to find the legendary Nordic giants. Strangely enough, there were so many mountain spirits and wild monsters in the Norwegian forest. But after so many days, they didn't even meet one. It had to be said that the luck of this group of people was extremely bad. Of course, it could also be said that Derlin's luck was extremely good. Since they didn't meet those mountain spirits and wild monsters, Derlin was also happy. Anyway, he just brought them around the forest. When they got bored, they would leave the forest. Suddenly, a group of people appeared in front of them. This group, and more than 10 people were supporting each other. It looked like they had just experienced a huge battle not long ago. Almost everyone was injured. The two groups of people faced each other. They were a little surprised to meet each other. Demas, what happened to you? Derlin recognized one of them. Demas was a Norwegian spiritualist like him. But looking at Demas's current appearance, he was in a very sorry state. His body and face were stained with blood and dirt. His injuries were the heaviest among the group. Derlin, don't go forward. Ahead is the territory of a group of withered tree ghosts. We accidentally entered their territory and 20 people died. Demas said in pain. Withered tree ghosts were said to be people who got lost in the forest. They sat under a withered tree and finally became one with it. In fact, withered tree ghosts were not evil spirits but mountain spirits. In Northern Europe, this generation had discovered that they had the habit of living in groups. Are there a lot of them? Derlin asked with a frown. Very many, I can't count. Demas said. Chapter 1780. Doring turned to look at West and the others worriedly. In fact, he was already overjoyed inside. They could finally leave this cold and damp forest. No one liked to wander in a dense forest like this. The environment here was very painful. There were almost no dry branches here. There was no way to start a fire. They ate compressed food every day. The only motivation for Doring to continue being a guide was the rather high pay. These Americans didn't have any other skills, but they didn't hold back when it came to paying. Now Demas said there was danger ahead. Doring could take this chance to persuade them to turn back. Withered wood ghosts. They have a kind of withered wood essence. It's a very rare alchemy material, Ruan Faxburn said. Then let's go take a look, West said. At the same time he looked at Demas. Sir, which direction did you find the withered wood ghosts? Are you sure you want to go? Demas looked at West in surprise. Those withered wood ghosts are very fierce. As long as you enter their territory, they will attack you. Dellen's face was also filled with shock. Friends, let's not take the risk. The withered tree ghosts are extremely terrifying. Look at these people. They have already suffered heavy casualties. Why should we go and ask for more trouble? West glanced at Doring. We don't need you to do anything. You just need to show us the way. Doring was speechless. He could only lead the way. But after a short while, Doring suddenly lost control and exploded. I'm not going. Doring immediately refused loudly. I won't go. You're asking for death. Everyone looked at Dylan with a faint smile on their faces. Mr. Doring, we're not asking for your opinion or suggestion, West said calmly. If you don't want to accept our offer, then refund us the fee, West said calmly. I can refund you, but only after we leave the forest, Doring said. Although he didn't really want a refund, as long as he left the forest, he could find enough friends to support him outside the forest. This was Norway, his home ground. These Americans dared to fall out with him here. Unfortunately, West knew Doring's thoughts like the back of his hand. With just a glance at Dylan, West knew what he was about to fart. Mr. Doring, I want my money back right now. But, how could I have $200,000 on me? This is your problem. You guys are making things difficult for us. Dylan angrily criticized them. Forcing me to do something I can't? We hired you for a month, and paid you in full in advance. You brought us deep into the forest, and now you want to back out. Are we the ones forcing you? Or are you the one forcing us? West sneered. That's right. But you know that there's danger, yet you're still heading in that direction. If you want to die, I won't accompany you to your deaths. Our goal this time is to find the Nordic giants. Aren't the Nordic giants more dangerous than the Deadwood ghouls? Before you accepted our employment, you should have been prepared to face danger. Now you actually want to quit because of the danger. West stared coldly at Dylan. At this moment, Dylan's head was suddenly pressed against something hard. Immediately, Dylan broke out in a cold sweat. At some point, Klaus had appeared behind Dylan and was pressing the Desert Eagle against the back of Dylan's head. Well, what do you want? Return the money to us now, and we'll let you go. Or lead the way obediently, West said calmly. I swear after I get out, I'll return the money as soon as I can. West shook his head. None of us will follow you out of the forest. You can only return the money now. I understand. I'll continue to cooperate with you. Dylan finally compromised. He had no choice. After all, he didn't practice Iron Head on the back of his head. But he was even more dissatisfied with these Americans. But in the eyes of the supernatural organization, taking money to do things was a matter of course. This was the right thing to do. When they first worked together, Dylan had bragged about how professional he was. That was why they chose Dylan. They didn't need Dylan to be talented in magic. They just wanted someone who could lead the way. But Dylan had quit halfway. No one would be happy. After walking for more than an hour, the sky was getting dark. Dylan glanced at West and the others. Mr. West, it's getting late. Shouldn't we rest here? Keep walking, Ruan Fazabin said. The Witheredwood ghosts are more active at night. The people from the supernatural organization never knew how to be considerate. Dylan thought they were crazy. They knew that the Witheredwood ghosts were hard to deal with, but they still wanted to find them at night. Wasn't that asking for death? I can't walk anymore. Let's rest here, Lisa said. Lisa said. She was the youngest and had the weakest physical strength. Then let's rest here, Gaia said. Fazabin, if you want to find the Witheredwood ghosts, bring a few people with you. Who wants to see them? West asked. I won't go, Gaia said. I'll go, Angelit said. Me too. A few people volunteered. In the end, Angelit, Morit Jalanash and Ruan Fazabin chose to continue. Dylan heaved a sigh of relief. He finally stopped advancing. But he felt that these people were afraid. The so-called few people who were going were most likely going to take a stroll in the vicinity. They started setting up tents. Gaia tried to start a fire. Unfortunately, it was still a failure. The humidity here was too high. The broken branches and leaves on the ground were also damp. There was no way to start a fire. Of course, Gaia didn't need it. However, not everyone didn't need it. It was early October, but the temperature here was always below 10 degrees. In winter, it would be even colder. The president should come, West said emotionally. West sighed. The president knows how to enjoy life. If he were here, we wouldn't have to suffer so much. Gaia rolled her eyes. If Chun came, it would be meaningless. Everyone knew this. Wes was just mocking himself. Facing such a harsh environment was also a test for them. The giants in Norse mythology were famous, but in terms of strength, they were far weaker than the Japanese demon Tamamo. Chun Zhao was able to hold his own against such a powerful demon. The Nordic giant probably couldn't last more than a few rounds against Chun Zhao. Chapter 1781. Derlin was thinking about finding a chance to escape. Anyway, he definitely had an advantage in the terrain here. Moreover, the fog in the forest didn't disperse. Derlin sat under a tree and observed everyone in the camp. He didn't know when the four who'd gone to find the Deadwood ghosts would return. It would be best if they really went to find the Deadwood ghosts. Then they wouldn't be able to return. Out of the 30 or so people that Dimas had brought, only 20 were left in the Deadwood ghosts' territory. If the four really went to the Deadwood ghosts' territory, they definitely wouldn't be able to return. Derlin saw Gaia sitting on a high slope not far away. West, on the other hand, was talking to someone. President, we didn't encounter any trouble, West said. The environment here is a bit bad, but they didn't have much trouble. He tried his best to convince Chun Zhao not to come over. Telling Elite that I've taken care of his son. Tell him not to worry. West didn't think that he needed to say anything. And Elite didn't take it to heart at all. Suddenly, a thunderous boom came from not far away from the camp. West jumped in fright. What happened? West, what's the matter? It's nothing. It seems like something attacked our campsite. West looked in the direction of the loud noise. The people from the association in the campsite all looked calm and collected. Even Derlin stood up abruptly. He'd already been a bit disloyal. When he heard the boom, he shuddered like he'd done something wrong. Gaia, go and see what happened. Gaia stood up and walked around the camp. There was a huge hole in the ground. Smoke was still coming out of it. But there was nothing else. Klaus also came to the scene. He paced around the hole twice. He picked up the slightly warm stone on the ground and sniffed it. It's not a gunpowder explosion, Klaus said. I don't feel any magic left here either, Gaia said. Then what kind of attack made such a huge hole? I don't know yet. Just then, dark clouds covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, lightning flashed and thunder roared. There seemed to be something moving in the thunderclouds. Boom! As the lightning flashed and thunder roared, a huge body flashed through the clouds. Wow! Giant! It's a giant! Gaia and Klaus were not the only ones who saw it. Many people in the camp saw the huge body. The figure appeared as the lightning streaked across the sky. After the lightning disappeared, they disappeared together. Although it was only for a moment, it allowed people to clearly see his silhouette. It was a giant with a huge body. That was definitely a giant from Norse mythology. However, that body was too big. It was as tall as a mountain. Derlin shuddered. He had also seen the scene in that instant. There really were giants. Giants really existed. In fact, in the forests of northern Europe, there were many giant humanoid species. Like a cyclops, like a mountain lion, or an ogre. They were all humanoid creatures, and they were tall. However, compared to the true legendary giants, it was not even worth mentioning. In Norse mythology, giants were the enemies of the gods of Odin. During the twilight of the Lord God, the giants were led by the evil god Loki, and launched a war against the gods. If they were at the level of the mountain spirits and wild monsters, it was obviously impossible for them to be the main force in attacking the god race. And it was even more impossible for them to trigger the twilight of the gods. In the Norse region, people also strongly believed in fate and cause and effect. In Norse mythology, Odin knew that the twilight of the gods was triggered by the giants. Therefore, he started to chase the giants. However, in the end, because of Odin's chase, the giants attacked the gods of Odin. This was cause and effect, so it was not a product of Buddhism. Actually, this kind of cause and effect existed in many religions. Everyone looked at each other, shocked by the giant that had suddenly appeared and disappeared. President, I think we found the giant, West said. Found it? Do you have a picture? Chun Zhao was instantly interested. No, West said. The giant only saw his silhouette in the instant of the lightning, and then disappeared. Chun Zhao felt that it was a pity. It was more like the legendary giants. Everyone wanted to chase after the giant, but the giant came, and went without a trace. There was no way to chase after him. After hanging up, West looked at Derlin. Derlin's body froze instantly. Mr. Derlin, where are you going? I want to go to the bathroom. Is that so? Then why are you carrying so many bags? West sneered at Derlin. Mr. West, I don't want to die with you. As you can see, that giant is impossible to defeat. No one can defeat such a huge monster. I advise you to leave this place as soon as possible. If that giant attacks you, all he needs to do is stomp you into the ground. Derlin was a psychic, but he was not a warrior. It doesn't matter if we can beat the giants or not. That's our problem, West said calmly. Their goal was never to complete the Scarlet Red mission. Their mission was to experience and train. Completing the mission was secondary. Now that they had a lead on this mission, it was even more impossible for them to leave. If they saw a giant, they would immediately run away. Then they wouldn't be able to face Chen Zhao again. When he came, he swore that he didn't need Chen Zhao to accompany him. In the end, he fled back with his tail between his legs. Mr. Doring, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. But you have to leave everything you have with you as collateral. Derlin's expression froze. Wes was obviously making things difficult for him. They had been walking here for a few days. Without these things, he basically couldn't walk out of the forest alive. Even if he knew magic, it was useless. He couldn't fly, including your clothes. Wes didn't care about leaving a way out. He wasn't familiar with Derlin, and he wasn't from Northern Europe either. If Derlin left them in the deep mountains and ran away on his own, that would be the case. Wes would bury him deep in the mountains. I'm not leaving, Derlin said angrily. I'm not leaving, okay? He returned to the camp dejectedly. At this time, the sky had already turned dark, and it was raining at the same time. Doring shivered and hid in the tent. Suddenly, Derlin heard a commotion outside. Derlin stuck his head out of the tent and looked. It turned out that Ruan Faxben, an elite Jalanash, and Morad had returned. Seeing that the four were unharmed, Derlin thought to himself, it's just as I guessed. The four of them just strolled around the area. Chapter 1782. The four of them had just fought a great battle, so they were a little tired. Although they were a little tired, they were still excited and gathered together to discuss. In the depths of the withered tree ghoul's territory, there's a huge withered tree ghoul. We didn't dare to go in. There are too many of them, tens of thousands. Unless the president comes personally, there's no way to clear them out, Ruan Faxben said. The four of us killed hundreds of withered tree ghouls outside, but they have some intelligence. They knew we weren't to be trifled with, so they retreated and opened up a path for us to come out. Morad's saliva flew everywhere as he spoke. This is the withered tree essence we brought back. Jalanash took out a bag filled with green beads. They looked very beautiful. We saw giants today, the legendary Nordic giants. Derlin glanced at them, and then retracted his head. Hey Demas, after you go out, help me contact some people. You're in trouble? Yes, the people you saw today. Recently, many Norwegian spiritualists have become guides for spiritualists from outside. It'll be difficult to find enough people. Sacred Flame Sect is fine too, Derlin said in a low voice. Sacred Flame Sect? Are you sure you want me to contact them? They're a bunch of lunatics. Yes, I'm sure. These damn Americans, they dare to threaten me. Don't they know where they are? I have money, and I believe that these Americans have money too. The Sacred Flame Sect was active in Norway. This sect came from Central Asia. It had a famous predecessor, the Fire Worship Sect. But after spreading here, it formed its own group. In this era, the Fire Worship Sect, which used to be a little extreme, had now undergone a reform to conform to the requirements of this era and the various governments. Therefore, the current Fire Worship Sect's teachings were more in line with the requirements of the various governments. But the Sacred Flame Sect didn't learn the good side of the Fire Worship Sect, but they learned all the old customs of the Fire Worship Sect. And it didn't seem to change at all. In fact, the current Sacred Flame Sect was already controlled by some people. As the beneficiaries, they naturally didn't want to change the existing rules. Therefore, in Europe, the Sacred Flame Sect was notorious. Some evil spiritualists also relied on the Sacred Flame Sect to commit crimes. However, there were only a few strongholds in Northern Europe. Meanwhile, Eastern Europe was where the Sacred Flame sect was the most rampant. This was in line with the laws of modern society. The more stable a society was, the fewer gangs and cults there were, and vice versa. I'll ask you one last time. Are you sure you want to look for the Sacred Flame sect? This could kill someone. I know. Derlin had already made up his mind. If these Americans didn't die, they would most likely kill him. Rather than that, he might as well kill them. Did these Americans think that they could do nothing to him just because he was in their hands? How naive. Karan, you have to go to class. Mr. Chen already said that you're fine. You can't continue skipping classes, Amy said seriously. No, I'm not playing truant. I've already asked the school for a week off. Are you going to stay at home and do nothing for the whole week? Your school must be crazy to actually give you a week off. Actually, Mr. Chun helped me get the principal to sign the leave slip, Karan said. Amy was speechless. She picked up the phone. Hey Mr. Chun, Karan hasn't been to school for a few days. I think you can help me talk to him. Fine, give the phone to Karan. Karan took the phone and compromised after a few seconds. Karan returned the phone to Amy. Fine, I'll go to school tomorrow. Just then, Ceylon returned home covered in dirt. Amy and Karan froze. Ceylon seemed to have been bullied at school. Her entire body was covered in dye. Her face, body, and hands were all covered in it. Even her hair was curled up and covered in sticky dye. Amy and Karan quickly pulled Ceylon back. Ceylon, what's wrong? Mom, they called me an evil witch. I fought with them, Ceylon said. Karan raised an eyebrow, his expression unnatural. Amy was furious. Did this happen in your school? Ceylon nodded. Amy gritted her teeth. Why did they call you that? Because I wanted to show them my newly discovered ability. Ceylon pointed with her finger. A ball of flame rose from her fingertip. Amy was scared and quickly stepped back, looking at Ceylon in horror. Ceylon, put it away. What are you doing? Karan quickly called. Amy turned to look at Karan in surprise. She didn't seem surprised to find her son at all. As if he had already discovered Ceylon's ability. Amy didn't know what to do. She was just an ordinary housewife. She had never faced this kind of situation. It was already beyond her ability to handle. Ceylon, this is magic, right? Brother, does this count as magic? Ceylon turned to look at her brother. Karan turned to look at his mother. He didn't know how to answer this question. Should he continue to hide it from his mother? Or just tell the truth? Dad can too. Brother can too. Oh yes, Uncle Chen can too. A certain nerve in Amy's brain suddenly connected. She recalled certain scenes in her mind. Ceylon, when did you learn it? Mom. Shut up. Amy suddenly glared at Karan fiercely. Karan could only back away. Last time I was sick, Uncle Chen cured me. Then Uncle Chen, Dad, brother, sister, Uncle, Auntie, and Grandpa West all know it. They say I'm the third night or something. Amy took a deep breath. She picked up her phone and called Chen Zhao again. Mr. Chen, can you come to my house? Ceylon might have a problem. Okay, I'll go now. Chen Zhao used half an hour to get there. Chen Zhao knocked on the door. When Kalon opened the door, he whispered to Chen Zhao, Mom knows. Knows what? Amy had her hands on Ceylon's shoulders. She stood at the door and looked at Chen Zhao. Hi Amy. Chen Zhao suddenly regretted it. He should have found an excuse. Shouldn't an elite be the one to talk to his wife? Why did he have to get involved in this? What a headache. Chapter 1783. Mr. Chen, I want to know why my daughter has superpowers. Chen Zhao had hoped that it was something else, but it seemed like he'd been overthinking. But in the end, Amy didn't plan on beating around the bush. She went straight to the point. Chen Zhao didn't know how to respond. Do you want to hear the truth or a lie? What do you think? Amy stared at Chen Zhao aggressively. Amy's sudden attack didn't give Chen Zhao a chance to dodge. Actually, it's not a superpower, Chen Zhao said helplessly. Of course, it's fine if you treat it as a superpower. It's more or less the same. I want to know the details. Ceylon, Kalon, and an elite. Amy, first you have to know that there are ghosts and demons in this world, Chen Zhao said. Ghosts? I thought this was the plot of X-Men. But what you're saying now reminds me of the plot of Hell Detective. Amy could still joke around, which meant she wasn't in a bad mood. In fact, Amy was angry. because she was the last person in the family to know about it. Ha! Amy, you're funny. You think I'm joking? Amy looked at Chen Zhao coldly. Is that a problem? Of course. DC Comics have always been dark. Chen Zhao suddenly didn't know how to continue. But reality has nothing to do with comics. Fine, continue, Amy said. There are souls and demons in this world. Of course, there are people who fight them. Spiritualists are like that. Of course, different countries have different names for them. Chen Zhao said. Your daughter is a witch, Chen Zhao said. It's more likely that she inherited her bloodline from you. Me. But I'm a normal person. There's a type of person who's a hidden spiritualist. In fact, every witch is a hidden spiritualist before they awaken. The only difference is whether they awaken or not. You mean to say that I might be able to master magic? It's a very dangerous process, Chen Zhao said. Amy, do you remember that after you and an elite fought last time, Ceylon was hospitalized in a coma? Under normal circumstances, she would have died. Amy's heart trembled. She had no idea that the situation would be so dangerous at that time. I can solve most problems, Chen Zhao said. But I can't guarantee that I can save people every time. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen. I shouldn't have talked to you like that. Amy suddenly felt grateful. That's not a problem. Chen Zhao shook his head. Colin's bloodline comes from his father. His ancestor might be a demon or some special existence. So he inherited some of his ancestor's abilities. However, male awakenings are more common and less dangerous. Of course, what happens in movies and horror movies won't happen in reality. There's no hunting for superpowers. And there's no so-called discrimination or prejudice. Amy looked at Kellen. Kellen, what superpowers do you have? Mom, Mr. Chen said it's not a superpower. Cut the crap. Let me take a look. But, Colin looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao had already turned his head away, ignoring Colin's doubts. How he decides is his business. It has nothing to do with me. This place is too small, Colin said. Let's go somewhere more secluded, Chen Zhao said. There was a secluded park nearby. After everyone arrived at the park, Colin started to show off his abilities. Speed. When Colin ran through the entire park at his fastest speed, Amy was still shocked. It was different from Ceylon's, which only used her finger to light a fire. It looked like magic. But Colin's speed was already shocking to Amy. Mr. Chen, what about you? What ability do you have? I'm a strength-enhanced type. I'm really strong. How strong? Really strong, Chen Zhao said. I can lift a car. Looking at Amy's expectant eyes, Chen Zhao wasn't sure if he should perform a performance of catching a car with his bare hands. Is Angelite's job dangerous? Amy asked. It's a bit dangerous, but I'll try my best to ensure everyone's safety. Of course, I'll also ensure the safety of the members' families. Since he'd already said it out loud, Chen Zhao couldn't keep hiding it anymore. Was it not dangerous to tell Amy that there was no such thing? That would be irresponsible to her family. Did Colin get attacked last time when he fainted? No. Chen Zhao hurriedly said before Colin could. Actually, Colin had just obtained his bloodline ability. His body hasn't caught up yet, so he's malnourished. Hearing this, Amy heaved a sigh of relief. What does an elite usually do for his missions? Deal with supernatural incidents, such as haunted houses. An elite or other people have to deal with them. What about his business trip to Norway? Something like that, Chen Zhao said. I'll try to reduce his business trips in the future. No, I don't want to be a hindrance to his work. I can tell that he likes his job. In that case, I'll support him. Amy's gaze was gentle after an elite got rid of the last barrier. After an elite removed the last barrier, Amy became more rational. Mom, can I join the supernatural organization? I want to. No, Chen Zhao interrupted. Without Angelite's permission, family members can't join, Chen Zhao said quickly. After all, it's dangerous. Mr. Chunyu. What? Chen Zhao glared at Colin. I haven't even settled the score with you yet. Mr. Chen, is there anything wrong with Ceylon? I need to make her understand one thing, Chen Zhao said. This ability isn't unique, but it's best not to use it in front of normal people. As for her school problems, I'll take care of it. But Ceylon isn't a normal child. Chen Zhao thought for a moment. That depends on your and Angelite's choice. If you want Ceylon to be a normal person, then maintain the status quo. If you want her to enter the supernatural world, then start teaching her magic now. To be honest, Ceylon is very talented. There might not even be 1 in 10 million people like her. She's that talented? Amy asked in surprise. Even more so than Kalon. Chen Zhao glanced at Kalon. He's the lowest level. If Ceylon has systematic teaching and guidance, she might become one of the strongest people in the world in the future. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't say that for sure. After all, talent was one thing, and progress was another. Chapter 1784. It's not a bad thing to be a spiritualist, Chen Zhao said. Actually, there are some spiritualists around us. They live normal lives too. Let me think about it, Amy said. Tell me about an elite. Chen Zhao avoided the part about Angelite's broken arm. He emphasized how an elite subdued demons and monsters. Colin's eyes lit up as he listened. He felt that his father was living the life he wanted. Just like a secret agent, he used the identity of an ordinary employee to hide his true identity. He wanted that kind of life too. But there were 3 mountains in front of him. His parents and Chen Zhao. If they didn't agree, he wouldn't be able to join the supernatural organization. Mr. Chen, is your family spiritualist too? Not all of them, Chen Zhao said. My daughter experienced life and death on the day she was born. Will you let her become a spiritualist? Of course. Why not? Fate chose her, so there's no need to run away. Also, becoming a spiritualist doesn't mean you have to fight. Having abilities that others don't might not be a bad thing. Amy thought about it. It was true. She even hoped that she could become a spiritualist too. Of course, she also knew that she couldn't force it. This society is actually very dangerous. I've lived in China for 25 years, and I've never seen a gun in real life. But in the half a year I've been in LA, I've experienced 5 shootings, 1 bank robbery, and 2 kidnappings. If I didn't have special abilities, I'd probably be dead already. Can you avoid shootings with these abilities? Shootings happen randomly, no one can predict it. Of course, if Ceylon could learn and practice divination magic, she might be able to avoid these hidden dangers. Also, take Korin for example. With his speed, a normal person with a gun would not be able to hit him at all. Then Chen Zhao sent Amy's family back. He didn't call an elite. He believed that Amy would definitely call him. As for how they would talk, that was their family's business. This kind of trouble should be dealt with by themselves. The next day, after Fei Lai went to work, Chen Zhao took the 2 kids and Portia to the headquarters of the organization. Portia didn't know why Chen Zhao was here. There was only one old man, Aduz, guarding the headquarters. Moreover, she always felt uncomfortable here. Chen Zhao entered the warehouse. It had been 3 days since the equipment had been installed. Chen Zhao could use this opportunity to try. Of course, he locked the door first, in case Portia came in. Little Jerlin and little Larissa were left in Portia's care. Chen Zhao punched a hole in the wall opposite the ring-shaped sensor. Then he turned on the device. Chen Zhao stood at the other end of the ring-shaped instrument. As long as Chen Zhao passed through the ring-shaped device, the device would record his data. This instrument was originally used to measure the speed of artillery shells. However, there was no problem with using it to test other objects. He took off his clothes and changed into the dragon scale underwear. He took a deep breath. He assumed the starting position of a track and field athlete. Release. Chen Zhao kicked with all his strength and shot out like a cannonball. Chen Zhao instantly passed through the ring-shaped sensor. However, Chen Zhao felt that he hadn't let go of his body just now, so his speed wasn't at his peak. Chen Zhao returned to the device and checked if it had measured his speed. The screen showed 991 meters per second, which was Mach 2. 91. Chen Zhao went back to the starting point and tried again. The same process. Release. Chen Zhao felt that his condition was even better this time. There was an obvious improvement. 1,125 meters per second, Mach 3. 3 not bad. It seemed that after running twice, the cells in Chen Zhao's body had become active again. Chen Zhao ran again. This time, he increased his speed to Mach 3. 32, but not by much. For the next few times, Chen Zhao kept trying. It hovered around Mach 3. 35. After 10 tries, Chen Zhao had basically confirmed his running speed. Then he tested his flying speed. Chen Zhao did superhuman movements and passed through the ring-shaped sensor. The first time was Mach 4.25. Then, he tried 10 more times. His speed was maintained at Mach 4.3. He had a conclusion about his running and flying speed in his normal state. From now on, Chen Zhao would try in his complete state. Clone, all spells return to 1, dark assimilation, eye of power, mighty god. All the statuses were added to Chen Zhao's body. He had already become a small giant. The ring-shaped sensor was only 3 meters in diameter. He clearly couldn't pass through it by running. Chen Zhao directly tested his flying speed. Chen Zhao exploded at full speed, creating a strong gust of air. Mach 14.88. This was the result of the first test. However, Chen Zhao felt that he could still increase his speed. Then he did the second test. Mach 15.25. The increase was obvious. In his complete state, Chen Zhao was basically the fastest object flying in Earth's atmosphere. Even the rockets with the highest thrust couldn't surpass him in the atmosphere. This speed was unimaginable from the perspective of normal creatures. But for the more powerful existences that Chen Zhao knew, for example, the Great Lords, Secondary Demon Kings, and Great Demon Kings, Chen Zhao estimated that they could all crush him in speed. It was the same even if they weren't good at speed. Just like the current Chen Zhao, he wasn't good at speed either. But Chen Zhao could still crushing elite in speed. The difference between them was in level. So, when Chen Zhao faced the more powerful existences, they also had the ability to crush Chen Zhao in level. Moreover, it wasn't just 1 or 2 levels. In fact, there was a huge difference. Mr. Aduz, where did the boss go? Portia held little Jerlin's hand and carried little Larissa's. I don't know. Aduz knew that Chen Zhao had entered the warehouse. That's weird. Where did that sound come from? It's been making that noise since an hour ago. It wasn't here last time. Miss Portia, have you eaten? Our restaurant is open. Is there anyone else here other than you? Portia asked in confusion. She didn't notice Aduz's crude change of topic. Let's go. Jerlin really likes our food. Portia thought about it in confusion. Why did it feel weird? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1785. Portia entered the restaurant. She realized that the food section was already filled with all kinds of food. They were all prepared food. But there wasn't a single person. Just the few of them. Mr. Aduz, where's everyone? Who? A chef in a restaurant needs waiters, right? There's no waiters, Aduz said casually. Take whatever you want. Portia realized that there was indeed no one else in the restaurant. But who was the one who made all these dishes? It can't be made by a ghost, right? But the food was all hot. There were only a few people here. Could they finish all the food? Just then Chen Zhao walked in. Seeing Chen Zhao, Portia retracted her previous thoughts. With Chen Zhao here, they could definitely finish it. Clang, Portia jumped in fright. But it wasn't a big deal. The spoon had just fallen to the ground. But the spoon was on the table. No one touched it. How did it suddenly fall? Portia obviously didn't know that there were a few invisible people here. Don't look around when you're eating. Chen Zhao placed the food before Portia and slammed the table. It wasn't the first time she saw Chen Zhao eat. But every time, he would give her a shock. Was he really not human? Where did the food go after he stuffed it into his mouth? Not just Chen Zhao. Little Jerlin ate quite a lot too. In Chen Zhao's family, only little Larissa was normal. She was drinking milk from a bottle. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were planning to wean little Larissa in the next 2 days. Some children were easier to wean, because they had already received other foods in advance. So they could quickly eat other foods, as their staple food after weaning. Some children were more patient, and would cry for 2 or 3 days after weaning. They only wanted milk and nothing else. Little Jerlin had experienced it once, but she was very adaptable. She didn't cry much, and was successfully weaned in less than a day. She only woke up hungry at night during the weaning. If Chen Zhao and Fei Lai didn't grit their teeth and persevere, they probably would have failed. If they failed once, the second weaning would be even more difficult. Normally, it was best for children to be weaned between 1 and 2 years old. The digestive ability of a 1-year-old child was strong enough to accept most food. Some children did not stop drinking milk until they were 8 or 9 years old, or even 10 years old. In fact, this had become a burden for the child's growth. To a certain extent, giant infants' physical fitness and immune systems were weaker than children of the same age. Of course, little Larissa was the same as little Jerlin. They were both stronger and healthier than their peers. Milk was rich in nutrients, but the human body needed more trace elements. The richer the diet, the better the body's development and health. Take little Jerlin as an example. Although her growth and development were not extraordinary, however, her physique was far better than that of other children her age. Even children older than her were not necessarily better than her. Little Jerlin could soak in the seawater for half a day. After eating and drinking, Chen Zhao patted Adu's shoulder. Adu's, I'm leaving. Oh. Have a safe trip, guild leader. Along the way, Portia was puzzled. Whether it was in the Mingyue villa or in that restaurant, Portia couldn't understand why they couldn't find a chef. What was there to hide from a chef? Boss, where are the chefs in your family and that restaurant hiding? Why are you guys always so secretive? I already said that our chefs are ugly. They can't meet guests. What about that restaurant? They're twins. They're both ugly, so they can't meet guests. Portia's face darkened. Even if you're lying, can't you be more careful? If the chefs know what you're saying, I wonder what they'll think. Just then, Chen Zhao received a call from Felwood Cisco. Felwood, what's up? Mr. Chen, the main part of the Mirror Lake project has been completed. When do you have time to send someone over to monitor the project? I'm free today, Chen Zhao said. At the same time, he told Portia, let's go to Mirror Lake. When they reached Mirror Lake, Chen Zhao parked the car in the temporary parking lot. Little Jerlin had been very excited about returning to Mirror Lake. But when she saw the lake that had changed drastically, she was a bit dazed. Maybe she thought that she had gone the wrong way. Little Larissa had no impression of Mirror Lake at all. Felwood Cisco walked over. Mr. Chen, Miss Portia. It had been less than half a month since Portia's last visit. However, the Mirror Lake project progressed quickly. For one, it was because of Felwood Cisco's urging. For another, the latter part of the project wasn't difficult. The most difficult part of the project was wading into the water. After that was done, the main part of the project was no longer difficult. Chen Zhao looked at the completed main part of the building. He was quite satisfied with the design. Dad, is this our Mirror Lake? Little Jerlin asked. Mirror Lake was still Mirror Lake, but the buildings were clearly different from what she remembered. Of course. Don't you remember? But what about our previous home? Dad didn't think it looked good, so he rebuilt it. Portia was speechless at Chen Zhao's parenting style. She didn't know the actual situation. She really thought that Chen Zhao had demolished and rebuilt it because it wasn't good. But with her understanding of Chen Zhao, he really might do something like that. Because of the project, the water at the edge of Mirror Lake was a bit turbid. But it didn't affect the water quality of the entire lake. After all, the project was only going on at the edge of Mirror Lake. Moreover, Felwood Cisco was trying his best to ensure that the water quality of Mirror Lake wouldn't be affected. After all, Mirror Lake still had to provide water for the brewery. There wasn't much to see at the construction site. The current progress was around 60%. It was a mess. Chen Zhao couldn't tell if it was good or bad. Chen Zhao just watched from the outside. He'd leave the quality inspection to the professional department. Mr. Felwood, Chen Zhao said, it's best to expand your company in the next 2 years. Felwood Cisco pricked up his ears. His heart skipped a beat. Was it because of the private airport Chen Zhao mentioned earlier? Mr. Chen, my company's people should be able to handle the private airport. It's not a private airport. Chen Zhao shook his head. I can't reveal more information right now, but the project might be dozens of times larger than the private airport. Chapter 1786. Felwood's heart skipped a beat. Dozens of times more work than a private airport? What was Chen Zhao trying to do? Of course, I can't give this project to your company alone, Chen Zhao said. But I'll try my best to give you the project as long as it's within your company's capabilities. Felwood's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Chen Zhao didn't tell him. But Felwood felt that Chen Zhao didn't tell him, because it was a trade secret. But the few words Chen Zhao had revealed were enough to shock him. If he could take over this project, even if it wasn't all of it, after finishing this job, he would be able to retire. As for Chen Zhao lying to him, Felwood had never considered this problem. For one, Chen Zhao didn't need to lie to him at all. Moreover, in the past 2 years, Chen Zhao had been giving him all kinds of projects. Chen Zhao was now his company's biggest and most important client. Suspecting Chen Zhao was akin to digging his own grave. However, he couldn't figure out what project Chen Zhao had that was dozens of times more than an airport. It seemed like he had to change his company's development strategy. Felwood thought. Chen Zhao didn't stay at the construction site for long. He looked around and left with his child. This is where we came from yesterday. This area is the territory of the withered tree ghouls. If you go any further, you will be surrounded by a large number of withered tree ghouls. It will be very troublesome if you fall into their territory. Ruan Faxi pointed at a valley in front of them. We'll go from the outside, West said. There's no need to enter the valley. Dylan had been following the team, but he was in the middle. This was to prevent him from running away. Dylan was half-hearted, but his role in the team couldn't be doubted. Not only did he know the terrain of this area like the back of his hand, but he also had a special spell called the Spirit of Guidance. Of course, this spell had nothing to do with Buddhism. It was a type of prophecy spell. It could tell the correct direction through divination. However, this spell had a disadvantage. If the same question was asked repeatedly, the mana consumption would double. For example, they were looking for the Nordic giants. The first time they used this spell to ask for the correct direction, it didn't consume much mana. The second time he asked the same question, the magic power would double. The third time, it would double again and so on. If a person's magic is strong enough, they can find almost anyone or anything. But no one could use it infinitely. Doring's magic power was very average. He couldn't be compared to the members of the Magic Association. Compared to ordinary spiritualists, Dylan's strength was also very ordinary. Therefore, he could only use the Spirit of Guidance 3 times at most. Doring had already used the Spirit of Guidance once before. Therefore, he still had 2 chances to use the Guidance Spirit. This was also why West had approached him and offered him such a high price in the first place. $200,000 for 1 month's time. One had to know that even hiring a spiritualist would only cost slightly more than an ordinary person. More, were the tooth of the fire dragon. It can dispel some of the cold. Ruan Faxi tossed a pendant to Moore. In their group, Mo, Air and Rissa were the youngest. Riisa could absorb the heat around her, so she didn't need to worry about catching a cold at all. Moore, on the other hand, was a big kid who was still growing. He caught a cold last night. However, Moore always had the mentality that he was a man and an adult. He felt that everyone in the group should be treated the same. He would eat what others ate. He would use what others used. But he clearly didn't have the ability, yet he liked to show off. Moore, wear it, West said. Otherwise, I'll call the president and have him come and take you away. Okay, I'll wear it. Suddenly, Doring noticed the tooth of the fire dragon hanging around Moore's neck. Doring's heart skipped a beat. It was faintly emitting pure flame power. Could it really be a dragon tooth? If it really was a dragon tooth, these guys were too extravagant. They actually hung the dragon tooth around their necks like a pendant. If given to an alchemist, this dragon tooth could definitely be made into a high-quality magic tool. These Americans were indeed a bunch of nouveau riche. They didn't have any ability at all, but they were rich. Doring didn't know that the dragon tooth hanging around Moore's neck was of the lowest quality. It was the kind that nobody wanted. Ruan Faxi couldn't be bothered with magic at all. He simply polished it and pierced it to use as a pendant. The association didn't have too many dragon parts. For example, each of them was wearing a tight-fitting dragon scale undergarment. Who didn't have 1 or 2 dragon magic tools? But even if he said that to Doring, he probably wouldn't believe it either. Doring's eyes flashed. He had to find an opportunity to get this dragon tooth pendant. The fog seems to have dispersed today. Yes, it's much easier to walk. Everyone was in a better mood. Nobody liked walking in the fog anymore. Because of the fog, even their companions could only see blurry figures, which was a huge problem for them. Their faces were covered in mist after walking for a while. It was very uncomfortable. It seems to be dry around here. There should be some firewood. Why don't we rest here today and catch some game? We haven't had cooked food for days, Gaia suggested. Although compressed food could also fill one's stomach, not everyone could stand the boredom of compressed food. Gaia, Klaus, and the Lightning team were retired soldiers. They could barely tolerate it. But the others couldn't. Wes thought for a moment. All right, then we'll rest here today. Doring was completely speechless at these Americans. They had only walked for half a day, and they were already stopping. With their speed, when would they be able to find the giants? Doring looked down on West, and the others even more. But this was good. Demas had already sent him a message. He had already contacted the Sacred Flame sect. The slower they walked, the earlier they could meet the people from the Sacred Flame sect. It was impossible for this motley crew to fight against the people from the Sacred Flame sect. That group of Sacred Flame sect disciples were all extremely vicious and evil. They were perverse and vicious, and their methods were extremely cruel. As long as they were their enemies, there was almost no one left alive. Doring looked forward to seeing their expressions when they met the Sacred Flame sect. Chapter 1787. Today Portia followed Chenjiao to Seagate again. The people from Seagate reported the progress of the yacht to Chenjiao. Of course, there wasn't much progress. The yacht had just officially started construction. However, the person in charge of Seagate invited Chenjiao to visit their headquarters warmly. However, Chenjiao wasn't really interested. He had to go all the way to their company in Italy. So, Chenjiao could only say that he was busy. After leaving Seagate, Portia stared at Chenjiao speechlessly. Boss, did you invest all your money in luxury goods? Chenjiao's Mirror Lake Villa was only worth $10 to $20 million at most. The private airport and private jet were still in preparation. However, Chenjiao had actually invested more than $300 million into this private yacht. Portia couldn't imagine how luxurious a yacht worth $300 million was. More importantly, Chenjiao already had a yacht, the Hydra. In Portia's eyes, the Hydra was unimaginably luxurious. But the Hydra was only $80 million. How luxurious would a new yacht that was 4 times more expensive than the Hydra be? I'm rich, so I can do whatever I want, Chenjiao said matter-of-factly. Up until now, Portia hadn't seen many of Chenjiao's valuable properties. Marina Restaurant was one, but it clearly couldn't support all of Chenjiao's top luxury goods. She knew that Chenjiao had a brewery, but to Portia, a brewery alone wasn't enough. In fact, the brewery was Chenjiao's biggest source of income. Dashin beer had already spread across the entire North American market, with Mara Supermarket. Of course, the main market was still in California. The California beer market was completely dominated by Dashin. North America was also constantly eroding the market share of the former beer giants. The international brands had contacted Denver a few times, hoping to buy Dashin beer. Of course, it ended in failure. Chenjiao sold the golden chicken that laid eggs, and then invested a large amount of cash that he didn't know where to go. Chenjiao was either crazy or stupid. The only thing that could beat Dashin beer now was its production capacity. But no one could solve this problem. Dashin beer's production capacity wasn't limited by food. It was limited by the water of Mirror Lake. The only water source of Mirror Lake was the small waterfall, hanging in front of the villa. The flow of this waterfall was basically the largest output of Dashin beer. Of course, so far, Dashin beer had not reached its true production capacity. Ever since Mountain Beer's production doubled 2 months ago, Chenjiao's income also doubled. Denver had also transformed from an unemployed man, who had been driven out of his home, by Happy Dollar Beer into a billionaire. Even if he only held 5% of the shares, this 5% of shares, whether in terms of value or long-term stable income, was enough to make him a billionaire. Of course, he didn't completely trust Denver. But apart from 1 or 2 spies, Chenjiao had almost no restrictions on Denver. He and Chenjiao were now bound by benefits, so he wouldn't do anything that would harm Chenjiao's interests. Recently, Winnip had been trying to charm Chenjiao again. She even asked Feilai to give him pillow talk. He wanted to buy some shares of Mountain Beer, and even encouraged Chenjiao to list Mountain Beer. Fortunately, Feilai knew what to do. After all, they were family now. She wouldn't do something that would harm her family's interests for Winnip. The value of Dashan Beer's shares was limitless. If Mountain Beer went public, it would hurt Chen Zhao the most, because he was the absolute owner now. This was because he was the absolute shareholder now. Once Mountain Beer went public, his shares would be diluted. He would inevitably lose control of Mountain Beer. He would also lose long-term stable dividends. So, Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't let Mountain Beer go public. Of course, Amira and Denver as shareholders also tried their best to avoid going public. Going public would also harm their interests. This made Chen Zhao a bit annoyed with Winnip. Of course, no matter what, they were family. Chen Zhao wouldn't turn against Winnip. It was just that after being harassed a few times, Chen Zhao didn't even want to pick up Winnip's calls. "Boss, where are we going now?" "Find a place to eat lunch," Chen Zhao said. As expected, this guy had nothing to do every day. Other than buying things everywhere, he only did food. Portia and Chen Zhao found an open-air restaurant. Not long after they sat down, Chen Zhao met familiar people. It was Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore and Nawat Singh. "Daly Moore, Nawat Singh," Chen Zhao greeted. The two also saw Chen Zhao. They went up and sat beside him. "Chen, long time no see." Daly Moore's expression was pretty good. It seemed that she was in a good mood recently. "Chen, congratulations. The movie you invested in is a big hit." Kidnapping's global box office had already surpassed $3 billion. It had already slowed down. The only question now was whether it could break $4 billion. As Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore's company was Computer Special Effects. Most of her business was related to Hollywood. As a result, many Hollywood-related companies came to her recently to please her. They wanted to get close to her father. The company's performance increased greatly. Daly Moore was also very famous. Of course, she was more jealous of the huge returns that Chen Zhao's tens of millions of investment had gotten. In less than a year, Chen Zhao's investment of $30 million had gotten more than 20 times the investment. But she also knew that her funds couldn't enter Hollywood. She was only able to develop this secondary industry of movies because of Stephen, who was a mountain. "Miss, you are?" "My personal assistant, Portia," Chen Zhao said. "Portia, this is Daly Moore, and this is Nawat Singh." "Hello." Portia stood up and went to a nearby seat. She gave the table to Chen Zhao and the two girls. "Nawat, you used weakness mirror on me last time. Let's try again. I want to see if I've improved recently." Nawat Singh remembered that she'd used weakness mirror to borrow Chen Zhao's left arm to teach her sister a hard lesson. "Then I'll have to offend you." Nawat Singh had improved a lot recently. She also wanted to test it on Chen Zhao. Moreover, she had also mastered mirror magic, which was a step further than weakness mirror. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 1788. "Mr. Chen, this time, I won't use weakness mirror. I'll use real mirror magic." "No problem." Chen Zhao nodded. Weakness mirror, as the name suggested, was to copy the opponent's weakness and then create a magical connection. Then it would attack the opponent by hurting themselves. Mirror image, on the other hand, was the ability to copy a certain spell of the opponent or a certain part of the opponent's body. Chen Zhao immediately felt a spell approaching him. But it was an invisible spell. It couldn't be seen or touched. He could only sense it. But the moment the spell touched Chen Zhao, it disintegrated. Chen Zhao's non-elemental constitution was effective. Normal directional spells wouldn't be effective against Chen Zhao, unless the directional spell was shockingly powerful. If Nawat's had Tamamo no Mei's power, Chen Zhao's non-elemental constitution wouldn't have any effect. But Nawat's clearly didn't have that power. Nawat's was stunned for a moment. The feeling in her body was so strange. Did it work? Or did it fail? "Wait. My magic is fading." Nawat stood up abruptly and stared at Chen Zhao in shock and anger. "What did you do to me?" "What?" Chen Zhao was confused too. What was the meaning of Nawat Singer's sudden accusation? "My magic is fading." Magic fading? Chen Zhao was confused. "No. Wait." Chen Zhao suddenly looked at Nawat Singh. Did her spell succeed? Did her sight successfully copy his non-elemental constitution? Daly Moore hit Nawat's with a fireball. "I need to confirm something." Navat saw Chen Zhao's eyes. She didn't understand his intentions. But his magic fading didn't seem to be his own doing. Navat nodded at Dalymore. A small fireball rose from Dalymore's finger, and she pointed at Navat's. The fireball extinguished the moment it neared Navat's. As expected. Chen, what's going on? Navat's copied some of my abilities. She's immune to most directional spells. Even if it's an area of effect spell, as long as it doesn't exceed the upper limit, it'll disappear, Chen Zhao said. But Navat seems to have gotten rid of her magic too. Naut's lost her magic permanently? How long will the mirror image last? Chen Zhao asked. Half a day, Navat said gloomily. However, she was shocked by Chen Zhao's unimaginable ability. If he could replicate this ability without eliminating his own magic power, he would be almost invincible. Of course, this kind of invincibility was relative. It was definitely useless against Chen Zhao, the original master. Moreover, as the original owner of the non-elemental body, Chen Zhao wasn't affected by the spell's side effects. Even the thought of it was terrifying. No one could hit him with magic, and no one could hurt him with physical attacks. Actually, it wasn't that Chen Zhao wasn't affected by his elemental constitution. It was because his current cultivation system had changed from magical power to immortal power. However, Chen Zhao had only learned the neutral elemental constitution when his magic power had turned into immortal power. That was also a watershed. Navat Singh could replicate a non-elemental constitution. In a sense, she was already very powerful. Sorry Chen, I was rude just now. Navat was very embarrassed. She'd misunderstood and thought that Chen Zhao had done something to her. Not far away, Portia was confused. Weren't Chen Zhao friends with those two women? They seemed to have had an intense argument just now. The woman even stood up in agitation. But then, they seemed to have reconciled. Portia filled in the blanks in her head. What relationship did Chen Zhao have with them? They were asking for a breakup fee or something. After lunch, Dalymore and Navat Singh left. Navat, what are you looking at? I saw you studying your arms for half a day. I'm studying the mirror image ability I copied from Chen. Isn't it just eliminating magic and magical power? Not just that. Navat Singh shook her head. This feeling is really addictive. Is it that comfortable? You haven't tried it before, so of course you can't understand, Navat said. When can I learn mirror image? You haven't even learned the weakness yet. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Suddenly, Dalymore slammed on the brakes. Your sister is here again. Dalymore turned to look at Navat Singh. This wasn't the first time. Navat Singh's sister Okula Singh. She would harass Navat Singh once or twice a month. Of course, every time Okula appeared, he was very good at picking the right place. She would always calculate their route and attack in a place where there was no one. Dalymore often teased Navat Singh, saying that her sister was like a villain in a movie. She would harass her and then run. Okula's wind beasts blocked the front of the car. I won't get out, Dalymore said to Navat. You deal with it yourself. Navat's face was filled with helplessness. After getting off the car, he looked around. Naut's Hingis saw the air flowing around her. At the same time, she saw 3 people hiding behind cover. The 3 of them had different colored cheese flowing around their bodies. One of them seemed to be red, the second was gray, and the third was yellow. Navat could easily identify the 3 of them. Okula, come out. I see you. Navat Singh didn't move. There was no movement. Okula seemed to be planning a sneak attack. Navat Singh was speechless. Her sister had come at the wrong time. She had borrowed power that didn't belong to her. Although Navat Singh didn't have any magic now, but right now, she was unprecedentedly powerful. Navat Singh even felt like she was invincible. Okula, Barbara Rush, and Domingo. I know you're hiding behind cover. Come out. Navat shouted again. You want these wind-howling beasts to attack me first, and then you can ambush me. To be honest, Navat Singh was surprised that her sister had found Barbara Rush and Domingo. Unfortunately, no matter how many people there were today, she was confident that she could defeat them. The power that didn't belong to her gave her courage. Chapter 1789. Barbara Rush and Dominguez were of the same family as Nawat Shingles and Okula Shingles. But the two of them clearly didn't get along with Navats. Instead, they shared the same interests as her sister, Akula. As a matter of fact, Akula and two others were blocking Navat Singh. Navat Shingles didn't even understand what kind of power she had. Of course, her enemies didn't understand either. After the last few attacks, Akula Singh realized that his sister wasn't that powerful. A few months ago, when Akula fought with her sister, she realized that her sister had an enhancement spell. But after he calmed down, Akula understood. That enhancement spell wasn't her sister's but a mirror spell. After a few confrontations, Akula confirmed that her sister indeed didn't have any strengthening spells. Akula Shingles was fully prepared for this attack. However, for some unknown reason, his sister actually directly pointed out their intentions. The three of them could only walk out from behind cover. "I told you with our strength, there's no need to go through so much trouble," Barbara said unhappily. Barbara's face was filled with radicalism and excitement. Her palms were dyed red, not like normal flames. Instead, it was as bright as fresh blood. Barbara wasn't an elemental witch. She was a fury witch. Actually, it was similar to Tank. She became stronger through anger. The difference was that Tank turned anger into physical strength. Barbara, on the other hand, turned her anger into a scorching flame. Dominguez stood there calmly. Akula Singh wasn't a man who was good at trickery to begin with. Therefore, after being exposed by her own sister, she felt a little embarrassed. She was also a little shy, and immediately attacked Navats to cover up her blushing face. A few howling wind beasts charged at Navats. Navats' body lightened and she flew up. Everyone present was stunned by this action, including Navat Singh himself. She didn't think that one day, she would be able to fly in the air. Navats just wanted to avoid the wind howler beast's attack, but he didn't expect his body to instinctively dodge into the air. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo all raised their heads to look at Navat Singh, who was in the air. Disbelief was written all over their faces. But Barbara was the first to react. She aimed both palms at Navats, who was in mid-air. "Go to hell!" Bang! Navats' body exploded violently. But after the flames, Navat Singh hovered in mid-air unscathed, looking down at everyone. Barbara Rush didn't believe that her powerful attack couldn't hurt Navat Singh. Navat Singh didn't have to do anything. Barbara Rush's attack couldn't hurt her at all. Navats didn't even need to defend. It had to be said that the deeper one experienced this powerful ability, the more powerful it was. Navat Singh was even more shocked. Navat's heart skipped a beat. Her body seemed to desire the surrounding elements very much. This time, Navats decided to follow her body's instincts. Suddenly, Navat's body began to absorb the elements around her. In that instant, Navats felt her body become very scary. Her body even grew to a height of 2 meters, and the loose clothes on her body also became tight. She couldn't absorb anymore. She would die. Navats was alarmed. She immediately stopped absorbing the elements. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo looked at Navats in disbelief. At this moment, a wind howler beast jumped up and bit Navat Singh's ankle. However, the wind howler beast's bite force couldn't even break Navat's skin at this moment. Navats quickly descended and crushed the wind beast that was biting his ankle with one foot. The ground was also crushed. Navats felt an indescribable power in her body. Navats took a step forward and punched the ground. Bang! With Navats as the center, the ground was like a wave, spreading out in all directions. In an instant, the ground within a radius of more than 30 meters was covered with spiderweb-like cracks. The few wind-howling beasts that were close to him were instantly affected by the shockwave and exploded. Okula Sinjith, Barbara Rush, and Dominguez were all stunned. What kind of power was this? It was too scary. Navat Singh looked at Okula, Barbara, and Domingo indifferently. "Are you sure you still want to fight?" Navats didn't even know how strong she was right now. But she was sure that she wasn't as strong as Chun Zhao. She seemed to have reached her limit in an instant when she absorbed the elements from the outside world. If Chun Zhao used this move, with his strong body, he would be more than 100 times stronger than himself. Navat Singh suddenly felt very lucky. Thank goodness Chun Zhao wasn't her enemy. Having an enemy like this was really a headache. No, it should be a very scary thing. And Nawat Hingis knew. This might just be one of Chen Zhao's abilities. When the Holy Infant Hurricane came, Navots and Delamore had seen Chen Zhao in that state. In the third night, which had never happened before in history, Chen Zhao fought from morning to midnight. As for the Holy Infant Hurricane, it was truly an evil spirit that resembled an army of thousands upon thousands. But without exception, Chen Zhao tore them all to pieces. It was also the first time they understood the difference between them. Navots didn't dare to say that she could compare to Chen Zhao with the power she displayed. But for Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingue, it was already shocking enough. What kind of destructive power was this? If Navots really wanted to kill them, they wouldn't even have a chance to escape. Navots' attack was off the charts right now. Her defense was equally shocking. At the very least, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush and Domingo couldn't break his defense even if they worked together. Now get out of my sight. Otherwise, I really won't be able to control myself and kill you. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo's faces were ashen. They'd sworn to stop Navots, but in the end, they fled with their tails between their legs. They couldn't fight anymore. If they really did, they'd really die here. Chapter 1790. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush and Domingo ran away with their tails between their legs. Meanwhile, Navots didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to get out of her current state. After returning to Daly Moore's car, she sat in the seat with great difficulty. She was 23 meters tall, but the car was still a little small for her. Daly Moore stared at Navots with glowing eyes. Navots, you're too powerful. It's nothing to do with me. It's a completely copied ability from Chen. It's too scary. I have to learn weakness image and mirror magic as soon as possible. Daly Moore was suddenly filled with energy. Even if you learn mirror magic, you still shouldn't copy Chen's ability unless it's necessary. The consequences will be very serious. What's serious? That's the trouble with strengthening. Mirror magic can copy the opponent's ability, but after using the ability, it'll be a huge burden on the body. I remember last time I used weakness image and copied Chen's left arm. After the magic faded, my left arm was useless for 3 days. I couldn't lift it at all. I used so much power just now. I think I won't be able to get out of bed for a month. That's serious. That's the side effect of mirror magic. Otherwise, do you think this magic array is so perfect? But it's not bad to experience that. You know, you were like a god just now. No, you're still like a god now. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the car without any warning. Oh no! Navot Singh and Delamore exclaimed at the same time. Daly Moore couldn't brake in time, and the car crashed into the person. Bang! The expected scene of the person being sent flying did not happen. The front of the car seemed to have crashed into an electric pole. It instantly caved in. The airbag popped out from the steering wheel, and Daly Moore was confused. But Navots broke through the window in an instant and pounced towards that person. She hadn't dispelled mirror magic yet. She still had endless power. The person was pushed to the ground by Navots. He was also shocked. He didn't expect Navots to be able to push him to the ground. Who are you? Navots grabbed the man's neck with one hand. The man realized that he had overestimated his own strength and underestimated Navots Singh's. He had originally thought that he would be the one to grab Navots' neck. But now, the situation was reversed. How could this be? Why was this happening? The man's palms suddenly glowed with black light as he struck towards Navots' chest. But when his palms hit Navots Singh's chest, the magic attached to his palms dissipated. What was going on? Was Navots Singh that powerful? Who are you? Navots increased the strength of her palm. The man's neck was being deformed by a tremendous force. Eastern Unending Pillar King, lend me your strength, the man suddenly shouted. Navots Shingles could feel the man's power increasing, but it still didn't surpass him. She was more concerned about the magic this man was using. He was praying to the Eastern Endless Pillar King, one of the 5 gods of the Roma, and borrowing his power. In other words, he was the same as her Aroma? To borrow the Pillar King's power, one first had to become a believer of the Pillar King. The legend of the 5 Pillar Kings was an internal belief of the Roma. It was an extremely small group. The others didn't have this belief. Just then, Navots Singh turned around. She saw Daly Moore's head bleeding in the car behind her. She seemed to be seriously injured. Navots let go of the person in his hands. He was very strong. He was very powerful, but compared to her current state, he wasn't even worth mentioning. Navots wasn't worried that he could hurt or defeat him. But just then the man suddenly attacked. But he didn't attack Navots Singh directly. Instead, he reached out and grabbed Navots Singh's earlobe. Navots Singh instantly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The man forcefully tore the earlobe off. Ah! Navots Singh screamed in pain. Her ear was bleeding profusely. Navots Singh instantly felt her strength rapidly slipping away. Her earlobe was called heal. It could extend the duration of all sustained spells by double. The mirror image spell could only be maintained for such a long time through the earlobe. Navots Singh felt weak. But before the power completely dissipated, Navots punched the man's face with all his might. Ah! The man's face was punched by Navots Singh, and he flew more than 10 meters away. Navots Singh fell to the ground in pain. She had no strength left to chase. The man stood up shakily. He looked at Navots Singh, and then at the earlobe in his hand. He was hesitant. Should he kill Navots Singh now? After all, the threat that Navots gave him was too strong. But he wasn't in a good state either. His face was covered in blood. Blood seeped out of his mouth, nose, and ears. His head felt like it was splitting. It was extremely painful. At this moment, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo suddenly appeared. Mr. Warren, are you okay? Okula looked at his sister on the ground with a complicated look in his eyes. Go kill her. The moment Warren said that, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Take Mr. Warren away from here, Okula Singh said. Barbara Rush and Dominguez looked at each other, knowing what Okula Hingis was up to. After all, they were sisters. It was reasonable that Okula couldn't bear to kill them. Moreover, in order to hold Warren back, Okula had been attacking her sister on her own initiative. She was worried that if Warren fought personally, it would endanger her sister's life. Mr. Warren, you're heavily injured. We'll take you away from here first, Barbara said. To be honest, they all knew how terrifying Warren's strength was. They thought that if Warren fought, Navots Singh would have no chance of winning. In the end, Warren actually won by a huge margin. He didn't even win by fighting head-on. The way he won was very clever. Chapter 1791. Hey Stephen, do you have time to call me today? Chen Zhao had been wandering around for the past few days. He was very free. However, he knew how many places Stephen had gone to for the movie. Last time, Stephen had even gone to Chen Zhao's house and stayed for one night. Then Rasva took him away. As far as Chen Zhao knew, Stephen had brought the main cast and crew to at least 5 countries for publicity in the past week. Daly Moore was in a car accident. She's still unconscious. Huh? Which hospital? Chen Zhao asked. Chantilly Hospital. I'll go over now. Chen Zhao hurried to the hospital. He saw Stephen's 2 bodyguards and his personal assistant Yu Wenhui. The 3 of them were old acquaintances. So when Chen Zhao arrived, they didn't stop him. They let him into the ward directly. How's her condition? Chen Zhao saw Stephen sitting before the bed. Daly Moore was lying on the bed with gauze wrapped around her head. Take a look first. Seeing Stephen's serious expression, Chen Zhao immediately put down his toolbox. After a quick check, he stood up and almost slapped Stephen's face. Fuck, Daly Moore's just asleep. I just wanted you to see if she has any internal injuries, like a concussion or cerebral hemorrhage. Stephen looked at Chen Zhao awkwardly. Then please make it clear. Chen Zhao looked at Stephen with a dark expression. But the police said that there's something strange about the accident. What's strange? It's like Daly Moore's car hit an electric pole, but there's no pole nearby, Stephen said. Stephen said, the friend who was with Dahlia was found outside the car. From the traces at the scene, it looks like she crashed through the windshield. Huh? You're talking about Nart Singer? Do you know her? Yes. She hangs out with Daly Moore and she's not a normal person. How is she now? Chen Zhao asked. Unconscious. The doctor said that she looks like she just finished a triathlon. Her body is almost half paralyzed. She's in this hospital too, right? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, I arranged a ward next door for her. I'll go next door. Is Daly Moore really alright? If you want anything to happen to her, I'll do it for you. Scram, hurry up and scram. When Chen Zhao went out, Halifa Oliver and Sannel happened to come in. Halifa and Chen Zhao nodded. Chen Zhao went to Navat Singer's room next door and saw a woman walk out. This woman was Okula Singh. Okula looked at Chen Zhao suspiciously. Who are you? Chen Zhao looked Okula up and down. Who are you? Just then, For walked over from afar. Chen, do you have any patients in the hospital today? For had a headache over this bastard, who always came to the hospital to steal patients. In fact, Chen Zhao's actions were already half public in the hospital. Apart from the new employees, the doctors who had worked in the hospital for more than half a year basically knew that Chen Zhao was an illegal doctor. However, whether it was the major shareholder of the academy or the dean, they all turned a blind eye to this. Most of the time, he didn't hide it anymore. Singer glanced at Chen Zhao. So he was a doctor. After thinking it through, Okula turned around and left. Chen, can't you control yourself? It seems like you guys can't do anything to the patients I've met. I don't think this will affect your performance. After chatting with Four for a bit, Chen Zhao entered Navat Singer's room. After inspecting Navat's body, Chen Zhao realized that there was nothing wrong with her. After thinking about it, he realized that she had used her non-elemental body. In other words, it was mighty spirit transformation. However, Chen Zhao had used mighty divinization before, so he knew very well how high the requirements were for physical fitness. It was like pouring pure oxygen into an oxygen cylinder. This was because of the metal walls of the oxygen cylinder. However, if compressed oxygen was poured into a balloon, the balloon would explode instantly. Nevertheless, Navats didn't use it too much. It seemed that she was rather restrained and didn't use it too much. The mighty spirit transformation did put a lot of pressure on her body, but it didn't hurt her foundation. Actually, Navats was like an athlete who had overdone her exercise. Her muscles were too tired, so she wasn't really injured. However, Chen Zhao also noticed the damage on Navat's left ear. Chen Zhao wasn't sure what had caused the damage. Chen Zhao sent a bit of celestial power to Navat Singh. It could save her half a month of rest. Knock knock. At some point Stephen was standing at the door. Dahlia's awake. Oh okay, I'll go. Is she okay? She's fine. Chen Zhao shook his head. Chen Zhao followed Stephen back to Dahlia's room. Halifa Oliver and Sannel stood before Dahlia's bed. Dahlia was already awake and sitting on the bed. Chen, you're here. Sannel remembered that her mother and Chen Zhao had been at loggerheads before. Later, her grandfather had been the middleman, and Chen Zhao had reconciled with her mother. However, she really didn't know that Chen Zhao and her mother had such a good relationship. Oliver, Sannel, you two go out first, Stephen said. Chen, give Dahlia a checkup. Halifa was instantly unhappy. She looked at Stephen coldly. Why don't you go out? You can be here, but I can't. I'll go out too, okay? Stephen said angrily. After the three left, Chen Zhao sat on a nearby chair. Tell me what happened. I'm a bit confused about the details. Dahlia told him what had happened after lunch yesterday. First, Navat's sister had brought people to attack her. Then there was the car accident. As for the accident, Daily Moore remembered it clearly. However, after the airbag popped out, Dahlia was in a daze. Chen Zhao heard more clearly. The two groups of people who attacked Navats were probably from the same group. They were all after Navat's earring. Judging from this, the earring should be a magic item passed down by Navat's family. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1792. Chen Zhao looked at Delamore. After a long silence he asked, do you need me to do something? Wait until Knots wakes up. I'll listen to her. On the day little Larissa was born, Delamore and Knot Singh came to help Chen Zhao. Whether they were effective or not, Chen Zhao would remember this favor. Daily Moore, on the other hand, was much calmer. She could tell that Knot Singh could get rid of her troublemaking sister many times. But she had never really done it. This meant that she still had feelings for her sister. So Delamore didn't want to make the decision for her. After Knot Singh woke up, she would support her no matter what decision she made. In the end, Chen Zhao was an outsider. The favor was there, so he didn't mind being a knife for someone. After Chun Zhao left the ward, he said a few words to Stephen, Halifa Oliver and Sanger. Halifa watched as Chun Zhao and Stephen exchanged glances. Even a blind person could tell that they had something on their minds. Chun Zhao and Stephen were birds of a feather, but Chun Zhao didn't have much of a relationship with her. Even if she asked, Chun Zhao probably wouldn't tell her. However, Halifa couldn't understand why she was clearly closer to Delamore than Stephen. What could Chun Zhao and Stephen know that Delamore couldn't let her know? Halifa's heart ached and she was furious. But she wouldn't show it. Plus, if she asked now, there was no guarantee that Stephen would mock him. "Stephen, I'll leave Delamore to you," Halifa said. "I have something to do at the company. I'll leave now." After that, Halifa left with Sanger. Stephen finally asked, "Chun, what did you and Delamore talk about? Did she get into some kind of trouble? You have to help her." Stephen's mind was filled with all sorts of movie plots, like how a secret organization wanted to kill Delamore. That was why filmmakers were so jumpy. Nothing big, just a few blind people. "Delamore doesn't want me to interfere, which means she can handle it," Chun Zhao said casually. He didn't say everything so that Stephen wouldn't worry too much. Really? Really? Stop nagging. If something really happened, would I just stand by and watch? Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the piece of land I recently acquired." Stephen was in a good mood. "Your daughter is still in the hospital. Are you sure you can come down peacefully? You've already checked that she's fine. What's there for me to worry about? Besides, if something really happens to Dahlia, I'll rob Mirror Lake. You owe me. Is your daughter only worth a piece of land?" Yu Wenhui stayed behind to take care of Dahlia. The two bodyguards followed beside Stephen. Chun Zhao and Stephen sat in the back seat. "Old thing, I'm with you. But you still want two bodyguards to follow me. You don't trust me." The two bodyguards sitting in front were rolling their eyes. One of the two bodyguards was Femutis. She was one of the people who knew Chun Zhao's true colors. The other bodyguard came after Femutis. But he also knew that Chun Zhao and Stephen were so close that they were almost in the same boat. And Chun Zhao always liked to play such nasty jokes. "If I don't trust you, I'll tell them to kill you." Stephen glared at Chun Zhao. "By the way, Femutis, how's Evan?" "Not bad. He's gotten fatter." Femutis's income was stable now. He wasn't like before, when he could only feed Evan dog food. Stephen still paid Femutis a high salary. After 40 minutes of driving, they finally stopped. But it wasn't because they'd reached the ground. The road behind them was too hard to drive on. They could only get out and walk. The road behind them was a dirt road. Although it had been built, it hadn't been repaired for a long time. However, the environment here was indisputable. It was even better than the original Mirror Lake. They were at the top of the mountain. Looking into the distance, it was full of greenery. When the four reached the top, they were already drenched in sweat. However, a gemstone-like lake came into view. Chun Zhao gasped and turned to look at Stephen. Stephen was really awesome, to be able to find a place like this. Not to mention the feng shui. The spiritual qi here was much more abundant than other places. "How is it? It's not bad, right?" Stephen asked, rather proud. "Not bad, really not bad," Chun Zhao said sincerely. This place was really a blessed land. In ancient times, it would be a blessed land. To be able to find such a blessed land in modern society was truly a rare sight. How come no one owns such a good place? Chun Zhao asked, confused. Even a blind person could see that it was a good place. But why wasn't anyone occupying such a good place? Chun Zhao was really confused. There were many rich people in LA. It couldn't be that everyone didn't want this place, right? Hearing Chun Zhao's words, Stephen suddenly had a toothache. Seeing Stephen's expression, Chun Zhao felt that there might be some flaws that he hadn't noticed. "Mr. Stephen, move back. There's a crocodile." Another bodyguard immediately stood in front of Stephen. Chun Zhao saw it too. It was a 2-meter-long crocodile. There were crocodiles here? No wonder. But this place was about 100 meters above sea level. Chun Zhao didn't expect a crocodile to live here. "Is this running water?" Chun Zhao asked. "Yes, it's an underground fountain." Stephen nodded. "Everything here is good, but there are crocodiles. I found an expert to estimate that there are hundreds of crocodiles here. It's very troublesome." Since Stephen wanted to build a house here, it was obviously for living. But if there were crocodiles here, it would be a threat to the residents. It was impossible to clear hundreds of crocodiles. If one or two were missed, it would be a threat to Stephen and his family's safety. This was also why Stephen hadn't started building the land, even though he'd bought it for so long. Didn't you know there were crocodiles here when you bought it? I did. Then why did you buy it? I still have you. That's too much. You're treating me like a laborer, Chen Zhao complained. But this land wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. If there was a pond full of crocodiles, it meant that the fish here could support so many crocodiles. Just then, the crocodile that had been sunbathing by the shore suddenly crawled toward the fore. Oh, speaking of which, I haven't eaten crocodile meat yet. Let's eat crocodiles for lunch. Chapter 1793. Stephen and Fantas both knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. However, the other bodyguard, Frank, didn't know. He hadn't seen Chen Zhao fight anyone. When Chen Zhao casually walked up to the crocodile, Frank was shocked. He aimed his gun at the crocodile, but Chen Zhao only grabbed the 2-meter-long crocodile and lifted it up. It wasn't very big, but it was at least 100 kilograms. Chen Zhao actually lifted it up with one hand. Frank's jaw almost dropped. As for Stephen and Fantas, when they'd been chased by the demonized libel, they'd already seen Chen Zhao's power. Thus, a crocodile couldn't make them feel anything. Chen, this crocodile isn't enough for you, Stephen said. Skin it and roast it. There won't be much meat left. I'll go down and get a bigger one, Chen Zhao said. With that, Chen Zhao took off his clothes, leaving only his boxers, and jumped into the water. Frank's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Chen Zhao was asking to die, but Stephen and Fantas didn't care at all. After half a tank, Frank saw the water in front of him start to churn. Frank's heart tightened. Did Chen Zhao encounter crocodiles in the water? These were all crocodiles, real killer crocodiles. The largest could be 7 or 8 meters long and weigh close to 2 tons. They could dominate both freshwater and seawater. When they were hungry, they would even eat their own kind. In the animal world, they were definitely crazy. If humans encountered adult crocodiles in the water, they definitely couldn't win. Even on land, without firearms, they couldn't fight against these man-eating monsters. During World War II in the last century, there was a glorious story of a crocodile destroying a modern army of thousands. Putting aside the animals with infectious diseases, this was the most glorious war waged by wild animals against humans. There was no one else like it. In Frank's opinion, if Chen Zhao really encountered an adult crocodile in the water, he probably wouldn't be able to come up again. Whoosh! Suddenly Chen Zhao stood up in the shallow water. Frank was shocked, but seeing that Chen Zhao was unharmed, he relaxed a little. Just then, Frank saw Sleep tossing and turning behind Chen Zhao. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Chen Zhao was holding a crocodile's upper jaw with one hand. Frank swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That crocodile was at least 6 meters long. This was definitely an overlord among the Gulf crocodiles. It was obvious that the crocodile was very powerful from the force it slapped the water with. But was it really okay for Chen Zhao to just grab its upper jaw like that? The strange thing was that the saltwater crocodile couldn't close its jaws, even though its lower jaw wasn't bound. Frank was shocked. He couldn't understand how Chen Zhao had caught the crocodile with his bare hands. However, Chen Zhao seemed to be very familiar with the place, while Fantas and Stephen seemed to be very relaxed. They probably already knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. Don't come over. Let's kill it first, Stephen shouted, jumping away immediately. He wasn't as capable as Chen Zhao. If Chen Zhao didn't hold on tight, the monster could send him to hell with a single bite. Chen Zhao grabbed the crocodile's upper jaw and twisted it. With a crack, the saltwater crocodile's tibia was instantly broken. However, it wasn't completely dead. Its body was still wriggling. Stephen only calmed down after the crocodile's stomach was cut open. I told you to get a big one, but your head is too big. We'll get rid of them sooner or later anyway. Isn't that what you want? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. He and Frank were in charge of starting a fire. He couldn't catch crocodiles in the water, but he could still start a fire. Fantas was in charge of cutting open the crocodile's stomachs. Chen Zhao and Stephen sat on a rock by the lake. With Chen Zhao, Stephen wasn't afraid that a crocodile would suddenly jump out and swallow him. Chen, do you really have a way to kill all the crocodiles here? It's not troublesome, Chen Zhao said. Abitos and Raymond can do it. Bring them here, and they'll probably kill most of the crocodiles here in a dozen days. Raymond? Oh, that big snake, right? I don't think I saw him last time. Why did you hide him? I didn't hide him. It's just that his body has grown a bit too much recently. I didn't want to scare you. Last time I saw Raymond, he was 5 or 6 meters long. You said he's grown a bit too much? How much can he grow? Stephen remembered that the last time he saw Raymond, little Larissa wasn't even born yet. Raymond was long, but in his impression, Raymond had always been the skinny type. Compared to the python, he was at least half the size. He's 12 meters now, Chen Zhao said. Stephen sucked in a breath of cold air. 12 meters. He could probably break the world record. I'm going to Moon Villa today. I want to see Raymond. Stephen was interested. Your daughter is still in the hospital. Don't bring that up. Dahlia's fine. Soon, the aroma of meat wafted from the barbecue stall. Famutus and Frank didn't understand why Chen Zhao would carry so many spices with him. Chili powder, cumin, salt and pepper. Chen Zhao and Stephen started eating as soon as they arrived. Famutus and Frank didn't treat themselves as outsiders now. It was more fun to eat and drink together. Unfortunately, there was no alcohol. However, crocodile meat was really disgusting and had a fishy smell. Without alcohol, eating too much would be boring. Even Chen Zhao couldn't eat much. Such a big crocodile was wasted just like that. As for the small one, he didn't even roast it. Instead, he tossed it into the water. In the end, he just buried the rest of the big one. Stephen, what do you think about building your new home in the middle of the lake? Hey, that's a good idea. Why don't you build it in the middle of the lake? Mirror Lake is so much bigger than your lake. If we build it in the middle, it'll be too troublesome to go back and forth. They stayed at the top of the mountain for half a day. It wasn't until 3 in the afternoon that they went down. Stephen gave Yu Wenhui a call and asked about Delamore's situation. After making sure that everything was fine, he followed Chen Zhao to Moon Villa. Today, Portia stayed at Moon Villa to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa. Portia saw that Chen Zhao had left her, Jerlin, and Larissa at home. Portia thought that she would have a chance to uncover the mystery of Moon Villa's chef. In the end, she waited in the kitchen until noon, but no one came to cook. She was very disappointed. In the end, she could only cook herself. When she saw Stephen, she immediately started fawning over him again. She wasn't even this friendly to Chen Zhao, who paid her salary. Chapter 1794. Stephen was also shocked when he saw Raymond. Luckily, Raymond was still Raymond. Even though he had changed, he was still Raymond. After the initial shock, Stephen quickly calmed down. He observed Raymond with interest. This was not the first time Stephen had seen Raymond. Stephen had come into contact with Raymond when he was just a little snake. Stephen knew how intelligent Raymond was. Famutus and Frank, on the other hand, were frightened. They were afraid that the snake would swallow Stephen. What was a 12-meter snake? In this era, there were almost no snakes over 10 meters. It was not that there were none, but it was hard to find. Unless one ran to the deepest part of a tropical rainforest, they would not be found. Pythons and snakes were two different species. Raymond was a snake, not a python. But Raymond had the agility of a snake and the huge body of a python. The combination of the two was the scariest. If it was just a python, in an open area, no matter how big it would not be a threat to a rational person. Because the python's mobility was too poor. The water was their main battlefield. Snakes were fast, but they were too small. A wooden stick could teach a snake how to sit. Raymond also had a characteristic that snakes and pythons did not have. He could chew. He ate by chewing like a mammal. So he did not need to strangle his prey like a python. Nor did he need to rely on poison like a poisonous snake. Raymond had all the advantages of snakes and pythons, and even abilities that they did not have. Not far. The people from the Holy Fire sect were not far. He would meet them in at most a day. Dylan thought to himself. The journey these few days was getting more and more difficult. This was not a tropical rainforest. But the journey was also difficult. It had been raining for days, not stopping for a moment. Norway was in northern Europe, so it was cold and humid all year round. This was where the equipment of the supernatural organization came into play. Even Dylan had to admit that they were well prepared. Waterproof clothing and tents played a great role in this environment. They could even find a way to get some cooked food. But Dylan looked down on them more and more. These guys did not seem to have any other skills besides bragging. Every time they went hunting, it was Klaus and the others. It seemed that in this team, the ones with the strongest combat power were the ordinary people like Klaus. Suddenly, a person appeared in front of the group, swaying in their direction. The team immediately stopped, and everyone raised their guard as they looked at that person. The man walked a few steps and suddenly sat on the ground. He stood up with difficulty, but he couldn't walk to the front of the team. After 2 or 3 steps he fell to the ground. Moraz went up to check on the man. A moment later, he turned back and shook his head at everyone. Dead. Gaia turned the body over and found that half of the body had been hit by some kind of magic. It's necromancy, Keyless said. At this time, Doring walked over and said, I remember that there is a canyon of death in this forest. However, it's not that big of a deal. There are often teams going in and out of the Canyon of Death. Why do you want to enter Death Canyon? What's the point of going to such a dangerous place? Death canyons could be found all over the world. Most of the time, because of the geographical environment, animals or humans would die in the valley, and the deathly aura would not be able to leave. Over time, death energy filled the air, and the dead could not rest in peace. In the end, they turned into undead and wandered around the valley, eventually forming the Canyon of Death. Doring had never been to the Canyon of Death, but he had heard of it. At least 20% of spiritualists in Norway had entered the Canyon of Death. There is a magic material called the Dying Flower growing in the Canyon of Death, Doring said. If we can find it, it can be sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Also, the Canyon of Death isn't dangerous, so many spiritualists go in and out. Although he had plotted against the supernatural organization, he didn't lie about this. He didn't need to lie. Anyway, the people from the Holy Fire sect would come soon. Helis looked at the man's injury and said, the necromancy spell that killed him is very powerful. Let's go and take a look. We haven't found any traces of the giant these days. They were doubtful about whether they could successfully find the giant. Logically speaking, the giant was as big as a hill. When it moved, it might not be earth-shattering, but it should at least leave some obvious traces. It shouldn't be completely untraceable. But the truth was that they couldn't find any traces of the giant at all. However, they had been in the forest for 6 or 7 days, and they hadn't fought at all. This made everyone a little angry. Other than the withered tree ghost territory they had encountered a few days ago, for people had moved around a little. The others were just here for sightseeing. But of course they couldn't vent their bad moods. So after thinking, West said, let's go take a look at the Canyon of Death. If they could encounter some battles, it could ease everyone's agitated emotions. Gaia nodded. Okay. Doring looked down on these people even more. They only wanted to go to a place like the Canyon of Death that wasn't dangerous. He really didn't understand where these Americans got the courage to find the legendary giant. Even if they found it, could they really defeat the giant? Or did they have the courage to fight the giant? But he was kind enough to show them the way. After all, these Americans didn't lack money. If they had a good time in Death Canyon, he could also find a few dying flowers along the way. Doring directly used the guide spirit and found the direction of the Canyon of Death. Finding such a fixed location was very easy. It wasn't difficult at all. After walking for a while, they found another corpse. It had the same injury as the previous one. It seemed like the Canyon of Death wasn't far away. These should be spiritualists from Western Europe. This symbol seems to be a disciple of the Mountain Sect. The Mountain Sect was very famous in the United Kingdom. West recognized them mainly from the Mountain Sect insignia they wore. The Mountain Sect was a minority religion, but they acted more like an ordinary supernatural force. They didn't develop followers and believers. They just fought for territory all day and developed the businesses and companies under the Mountain Sect. The most unbelievable thing was that the Mountain Sect was a shareholding company. It was divided into major and minor shareholders. It had to be said that this religion, which was completely modeled after a listed company, was a brand new model. Of course, they weren't a cult, so they were developing quite well. It was said that they had many cooperation projects with the government. They had branches all over Europe. Chapter 1795. At the other end of the forest, a team was also passing through the forest toward the Supernatural Organizations team. Everyone in this team wore the same red and black clothes, but there was a red flame printed on the back. They were naturally from the Sacred Fire sect. There were more than 50 of them. They couldn't say that all of them were masters, but at least a dozen of them were quite famous in Northern Europe. Especially the person in charge of the division, Magri Modric. He was known as a tyrant in Northern Europe. Among the many people in charge of the division, his name was also very famous. Most of Magri Modric's subordinates were elites. To put it bluntly, most of them had some ability and were extremely daring. They used their own methods to do many evil things, and were wanted by the government or the spiritual world. In the end, they could only hide in the Sacred Fire sect to avoid trouble. These people all had one thing in common. They ignored the rules of the world. In this regard, they were very much like Magneto from the X-Men. They thought they were better than others, and didn't treat ordinary people as humans. Of course, in reality, neither the government nor the spiritual world would allow such people to be too active. The Norwegian Sacred Flame sect was considered one of the more powerful sects in Europe. Although the Nordic spiritual world was more active, the Norwegian government wasn't powerful. So it gave the Sacred Fire sect a chance to develop. At this moment, a corpse appeared in front of them. "Guardian, look at this corpse." Lev, Magri Modric's second-in-command, shouted. As the head of the Norwegian branch, Magri Modric's position in the church was that of a protector. Magri took a few steps forward and looked at the corpse. Frowning, he said, "Necromancy. Guardian, don't you think this corpse looks familiar? You know him?" Magri Modric asked. "No, I'm talking about the magic on this corpse." Magri Modric thought for a moment and suddenly remembered. He immediately exclaimed, "Isn't this the madman Ribrick?" "Yes, this is Ribrick's magic." Speaking of Ribrick, Magri Modric felt a headache and helplessness. Ribrick had once been a member of the Sacred Fire sect. In essence, he was no different from the other Sacred Fire sect members. If there was any difference between them, Ribrick was even crazier. To be precise, he was a complete lunatic. The other members of the Sacred Flame sect knew when to put on airs, although they had all killed and robbed before. However, he would not disregard the wine and start a massacre. But Ribrick didn't care. The things he wanted, the women he wanted, he would just take them by force. Furthermore, his methods were extremely cruel, leaving no survivors. This also caused the entire Northern Europe region to be agitated. The government flew into a rage and issued a must-kill order to the spirit world. This was one of the few times in recent times that the government had issued an order to the supernatural world. Even the Sacred Flame sect could not withstand this pressure. In the end, they could only hand Ribrick over to the alliance of several supernatural organizations. However, Ribrick had relied on his powerful strength to do so. After killing dozens of spiritualists, he swaggered off. Over the next few years, news of Liblick's bloody massacre spread from time to time. However, Ribrick no longer had anything to do with the Sacred Flame sect. Therefore, they did not care about what Ribrick did. No one wanted to run into a lunatic like Ribrick. Not even the Sacred Flame sect. This guy was a complete lunatic who did not know how to control himself. Furthermore, he also had a type of necromancy that he had created himself, which struck fear into the hearts of the entire spiritual world. "This is Ribrick's famous magic, dead cells?" Lev asked. Just now, Magri Modric had only felt the aura of death on the corpse. Only now could he be completely sure that the magic left on the corpse was dead cells. "I hope we don't run into that lunatic here," Magri Modric said. Even though there were more than 50 of them, Magri Modric was not confident that they could defeat Ribrick. Even if they could win, it would probably be a Pyrrhic victory. Guardian, there are so many of us. Do we still need to fear Ribrick? Since you know about the dead cells, do you know how terrifying this magic is? Magri Modric asked. It is said that this dead cells was created by the lunatic Ribrick. If you come into contact with the dead cells, it will erode your magic. Once your magic is exhausted, you will die, Lev said. Actually, if it is just to guard against the dead cells, most of our team can do it. As long as there is a defensive magic, the dead cells cannot get close to you, Magri Modric said. Then what is so terrifying about this magic? Actually, the most terrifying thing is that Ribrick can recycle the dead cells that have absorbed magic power, and then turn them into his magic power source. In the past 20 years or so, he has killed hundreds of spiritualists. Almost every spiritualist died under the dead cells, and the magic power of every dead person became his magic power source. It's like he carries hundreds of magic power batteries with him. He has almost inexhaustible magic power. When Lev heard Magri Modric's words, his face instantly became extremely frightened. A terrifying enemy with nearly limitless magic power? How could they deal with such an enemy? Guardian, doesn't that mean he is invincible? Of course he's not invincible. There are still people in this world who can crush him. For example, the 23rd generation Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church. 12 years ago, the 23rd generation Blood Mary personally went out to kill Ribrick. With the 23rd generation Blood Mary's help, do you think Ribrick can escape? Of course he couldn't escape. The 23rd Blood Mary is a powerful being. She subdued Ribrick in one move, but then she let Ribrick go. Of course he couldn't escape. Why is that? Because Ribrick and the 23rd generation Blood Mary were in the downtown area. Ribrick threatened the 23rd generation Blood Mary that if she didn't let him go, he would self-destruct. If someone else self-destructed, the 23rd generation Blood Mary wouldn't care. But Ribrick's self-destruction could cause heavy casualties in the downtown area. So the 23rd generation Blood Mary could only let him go. What about the 23rd generation Blood Mary? I don't know about the others. As far as I know, no one can fight Ribrick head-on, Magri Modric said. That's why I don't want to meet Ribrick. Even if we can win, I'm afraid we will suffer heavy casualties. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.